If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon, link is in the description.
Chapter 161. Walking Wake, Stop Playing Around. Dao Blade doesn't look so good, Hikaru patted the crest of Walking Wake's head. Only then did it reluctantly spit Dao Blade out, gesturing with its little claws in front of it and squinting its eyes. Rah! It wasn't playing. It genuinely believed doing so would make it stronger. Eat this. Calyrex handed a carrot to Walking Wake, which chomped it down in one bite. After that, it started roaring happily, though this time with a hint of dissatisfaction. Right about those carrots. And what was that earlier remark? What did it mean by thanks to your cultivation? The rain and sunshine on this land were brought by me, too. I played a part in this. After venting, Walking Wake nudged Hikaru with its head, grumbling about how it helped Calyrex with the farm work only to be chased around by the swords of justice in the end. Alright, don't be sad. You're the first Pokémon here, after all. You control the climate of the entire Sky Island. Hikaru hugged Walking Wake's head and coomed through its mane. That finally made it cheerful again, feeling that taking those beatings wasn't all in vain. Walking Wake, were you like this back in ancient times too, always whining to others like a baby? Calyrex chewed its carrot while teasing. Hikaru always said Walking Wake was like a caveman, or cave dragon, quite fierce and uncivilized at first. So why was it acting like a pet now? Whenever it was with Calyrex, it always had some terrible idea up its sleeve. Walking Wake shot Calyrex an annoyed glare. It did have a pack and allies in ancient times, okay. Even if they were mostly hunting partners and not true friends. HOH? So you had a group back then? Of course. But most of the time we weren't together. Competition among our kind was intense. While Calyrex and Walking Wake chatted, Hikaru crouched down to tend to a carrot that hadn't been harvested yet using his special cultivation knowledge and techniques. That particular carrot didn't seem fully ripe. After a while of careful work, he called out to Calyrex. Want to try cultivating this carrot? Calyrex and Walking Wake exchanged glances, puzzled but didn't ask further. Calyrex quickly finished the carrot in its mouth, wiped the dirt from its face with muddy hands now looking like a big spotted bunny and began humming a curious tune beside the carrot. It broke into an odd little dance, kicking and hopping, then raised both arms. A bluish glow burst from the soil. That immature carrot instantly swelled and became plump, radiating a delicious aroma. HOH! What's with this carrot? Rah! Yo! All three Pokémon leaned in as Hikaru pulled the carrot from the ground. It was different. This red carrot had a much richer hue, and perhaps it was just imagination, its skin seemed to shimmer faintly with a golden tint. In Hikaru's mind, information appeared. Venus vegetable, gourmet carrot, premium, ... Description: a vegetable brimming with complex flavors and aromas, grassy notes, fruity sweetness, citrus zest, woody richness, and a hint of fat. Just smelling it is enough to lift your spirits. A delicacy loved by many Pokémon. It had mostly the same effects as a silver star carrot, but this one greatly enhanced fullness and nutrition, and its flavor and food energy were also far superior. It's a Venus vegetable. Much better than the silver ones. Hikaru handed the carrot to Calyrex, whose eyes lit up as it immediately began crunching down the whole thing. Moments later, it stood there stunned, staring at the carrot leaves in disbelief, then shoved those in its mouth too. Delicious. Calyrex's verdict was straightforward. Then it held out its hand to Hikaru. I want more. The King of Bounty looked at Hikaru with puppy eyes and a hint of gloom. Despite all its effort farming the land and understanding agriculture, its crops were still inferior to Hikaru's. It didn't understand the Silver Star and Venus Star terms, but the difference between high quality and premium was obvious, and gold, of course, was more precious than silver. Where did it go wrong in the farming steps? Hikaru burst out laughing. This big-headed bunny looked pretty sulky, but soon puffed up again with confidence while demanding more. How cute! Seems like the king's powers have recovered quite a bit. Ripening Venus tier crops on demand isn't an easy feat. My powers are made for moments like this. Calyrex declared proudly. Then let's cook them into a proper dish. That way, they'll taste even better and have more effect, Hikaru proposed, gathering the immature carrots. Calyrex winced internally. Had it known Hikaru could make even better tasting carrots, it wouldn't have wasted its strength secretly speeding up those Silver Star ones. Even though those were tasty, Venus vegetables were clearly a tier above. Calyrex assisted with the crafting process and gained experience and growth. Farming LV1 experience increased. Familiarity with agricultural tools and soil has slightly improved. Calyrex learned, attentive care crops tended by Calyrex will have slightly higher quality, and be more resistant to wilting and pests. You gained knowledge, verdant mutation immature crops have a 20% chance of beneficial mutation. Also applies to seeds. Combined with seed mutation knowledge, it may generate strange seeds, making it excellent for developing new crops. Dow Blade, use Fury Cutter. Hikaru looked over the ingredients. Most of the crops Calyrex planted were carrots, understandable, as Crown Tundra's main vegetable had always been that one, originally cultivated as offerings to Calyrex. Other crops were far fewer in number. Mint leaf, thick leek, fancy apple, springy beans, bomb mushroom, sweet root, and cabbage. Many of these were common in the Galar region, grown in all cities. It wasn't surprising to find them in this dreamlike version of Crown Tundra. Hikaru decided to make a curry dish rich with Galarian flavor just like in the games. He set up a big pot and started cooking. Dow Blade, using its masterful blade technique, diced the carrots and other veggies into tiny, elegant shapes. Even Calyrex widened its eyes, picking up a carved slice of carrot and chewing thoughtfully. Ingredient, exquisite carrot cubes. Description, carrot cubes carved and prepared by Dow Blade, shaped with intricate precision. The ancient artistic style infused into the carving causes even ordinary ingredients to possess a strange power. Effect, best enjoyed in a vegetable salad to enhance flavor. Eating directly boosts mental strength temporarily and relieves fatigue. Pokémon with ancient origins especially enjoy this dish. Yo-yo-oh. Dow Blade, seeing Calyrex munching on its carrot cubes one after another, quickly lifted the tray. Oh, King of Bounty! These are not for eating yet. They go in the pot. If they're meant to be stewed, why carve them so delicately? Calyrex questioned. Dow Blade proudly waved its ribbons. Yoab! To constantly refine its carving skills, of course. Even food was a training opportunity. As the ingredients, berries, and veggies entered the pot, an irresistible aroma began to waft through the air. The sweetness practically rose in your mouth. Walking Wake, eyes fixed on the bubbling curry, flailed its front claws impatiently. It hesitated, staring at the flames, wanting to breathe fire to help but worried the heat would break the pot. At Hikaru's head shaking, it backed off. Then, as if struck by inspiration, it dashed away and returned with a light stone from the ancient forge. Let's use this to cook. It's powerful and comes with bonus effects. Hikaru. Well, if we use the light stone for heating. I guess it's like an electric stove. Clean and flameless. Though he felt this might be disrespectful to Risharam, Hikaru could sense a hazy consciousness within the stone that seemed fine with it. In fact, it even conveyed that if Hikaru polished it well and used it to cook, it wouldn't mind. In the world of Pokémon, dirt and grime were common. For fire types, the ashes left behind by cooking fires weren't considered filth but valuable sources to boost their flame power. As Hikaru and the Pokémon continued stewing their carrot curry. Across the Rainbow Bridge from where Walking Wake had returned, 3 Pokémon stepped into view. This is the place. The dragon's footprints are still on the bridge. This time, we must make it understand. The Unova region is under our protection. We won't let it run wild again. Wait. What's that smell? That's really good. Stepping onto the bridge were none other than the swords of Justice Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion. Chapter 162. It's ready. Hikaru scooped the curry into bowls and handed it out to the surrounding Pokémon. The dishes emitted a faint glow that was thanks to a bit of glorious cauliflower's outer skin he'd added into the recipe. Who would have thought it'd even have a glowing effect? Speaking of which, Galar's curry dishes had a rather mystical step to them, adding love. Maybe this was where the friendship stat came from? After all, this world did lean heavily on metaphysical concepts, so this kind of heart-filled dish might actually be a form of spiritual food? Dish, sweet radish curry, radiant cuisine. Description, the essence of Venus carrots has been infused into a sweet curry, bringing about an incredibly rich flavor. Combined with high-quality vegetables and berries and a sliver of glorious cauliflower's peel, this is a curry loved by all Pokémon, even those that normally dislike sweet flavors. Cooked using the power of the light stone, eating it hot brings great benefits to a Pokémon's growth. Effects, taste plus 100%, growth rate plus 50%, doubled for baby Pokémon, greatly boosts mood and increases friendship. Meal energy, bigness boost, fire LV2, drop boost, grass LV1, egg boost, LV1, dot. Cooking technique bonus, immunity LV2 enhances the immune system, moderately increases physical and mental stamina, and reduces the risk of illness. Radiant cuisine bonus, boosts both mental and physical strength, enhances bonds between Pokémon and trainer. Even though he'd added thick leek, it hadn't turned into a leek curry, it was still radish focused. The effects sounded complicated, but it wasn't hard to understand. Bigness boost increased the odds of encountering large Pokémon of certain types. Drop boost increased the likelihood of rare items dropping from specific types. Egg boost improved egg finding rates and accelerated hatching speed. After just a bite, Hikaru felt something strange. Crack. He glanced toward the ancient forge room. Was that the sound of an eggshell breaking? But he'd only had one bite, it couldn't be that fast, right? Munch 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 munch. Calyrex, having received a big bowl and spoon, had already plunged into its meal. Its oversized head blocked the view of its face, but judging by how fast it was shoveling food in, there was no time for commentary, completely immersed in the joy of eating. MMMPH. Suddenly, Calyrex looked up and thumped its chest. It had choked from eating too fast, but a quick flash of psychic power helped push the food down. And just like that, it resumed its curry feast without missing a beat. Walking Wake shoved its snout deep into its bowl. It wanted to flip the dish and gulp it all down at once, but its tiny claws couldn't manage such a feat. After swallowing a few mouthfuls, it began to enthusiastically lick its tongue, bright-eyed with delight like it had just discovered a whole new world. Compared to the expressive joy of those two, Dowblade could only absorb the essence of the food, it couldn't really taste anything. That was the inconvenience of being a Pokémon from the mineral group. Watching the other two gobble down their food with such pleasure made Dowblade a little jealous. Even back at the real-world workshop, it often absorbed the essence of Hikaru's delicacies. As long as the nutrients and energy were strong enough, they counted as delicious to it. But, it had never seen Pokémon eat like this. Yoo-woo. Trainer, what did you put in the food? Hikaru nearly blurted out onions by reflex, but wisely held it back. It's friendship. When you blend various high-quality vegetables and berries together and cook them just right, you get a meal full of happiness. Delicious food like that lifts the spirit. But since you don't have a mouth, I guess you can't quite experience it the same way. Hikaru smiled, and after some thought, Dowblade decided it would try cooking for itself someday. Right. Lilligant could cook floral soup, right? Maybe she could teach it. I'll try adding some spiritual energy next time. Dowblade mumbled to itself. Oh? That's actually a great idea. Hikaru nodded sincerely. Infusing dishes with spiritual energy or other ghostly elements could result in meals that ghost-type Pokémon would especially love. And ghost-type cuisine might not even need preservation. Since it was infused with spiritual energy, it likely wouldn't spoil at all. Yet, spirit-infused food might work as long-term preservation. Could be even better than ice-type's cold storage methods. Dowblade, yoo-woo. Is that really what spirit energy is for? Another bowl, please. Calyrex extended its dish, eyes gleaming as it stared at Hikaru. Walking Wake also lifted its head, holding its now empty bowl in its jaws, clearly wanting seconds. Hikaru happily refilled both bowls, and the ravenous Wake cheerfully wagged its tail, utterly content. Just then, it sensed three familiar presences approaching fast. Thud. A series of landing sounds came from the far edge of the Sky Island, expanded twice now, and three majestic Pokémon appeared on the large floating landmass, staring in wonder at the scenery. A farm. The more feminine Virizion blinked at the neatly cultivated farmland, intrigued and confused. Farms like this only existed in human society. Humans usually relied on Diglett or Drillbur to till the land. In Unova, farms often featured Pokémon like Buffalint, Petalil, Cotoni, and Whimsicott. But seeing wild Pokémon cultivating and planting crops? That was nearly unheard of. Most Pokémon didn't have that kind of behavior. The smell's coming from that direction. I see it. The brawny rock swordsman Terrakion spotted smoke rising from the farmland's edge, a small cabin, and a patch of strange mist. As the three drew closer, they caught a glimpse of what lay ahead and quickly conferred with each other. What's going on? A human. Knew it. This smell, it's human cooking. You'd never find this kind of complex aroma in the wild. That's not the point. The leader, Cobalion, spoke with a grim tone. The Pokémon Dream World is a realm only Pokémon can freely enter. A human's presence here is unnatural. Human and Pokémon dreams rarely connect. If entry were so easy, this place would have been overrun long ago by scheming humans. With wary eyes and a touch of hostility, the Swords of Justice finally spotted Walking Wake, who had stopped eating. But aside from the notorious water dragon that went around stealing from weaker Pokémon, there were two others they hadn't seen before. One that looked like a pair of crossed swords. And a bunny-headed creature with a massive noggin. Whoa, that's a huge head! The three said in unison. Startled, Calyrex thumped its chest, nearly choking again. It had heard enough of that comment these past few days and was just about ready to snap. But instead of arguing back, it simply gave the trio a blank stare. And somehow, that stare said it all. Virizion, oh no, we hurt its feelings. We shouldn't have said that. Terrakion, haha, but it is kinda cute. Cobalion, it's hanging out with the fake dragon that's been causing trouble in Unova's dream world. Clearly an accomplice. Rah! Walking Wake's eyes gleamed with hostility. Getting chased around elsewhere was one thing, but now they dared to come here. This is home turf. And I've got my trainer with me, I'm not afraid anymore. With a quick motion, Walking Wake chomped down on one of Doublade's swords. Look! I've got a sacred sword too. Oh? Those two swords aren't Pokémon? They're equipment. Cobalion raised an eyebrow. Are they trying to imitate our sacred sword technique? Terrakion mused, amused. Humph. Sacred sword isn't just a tool, it's a power forged over years of training. If holding a sword in your mouth was all it took, that'd be a joke. Just like that water dragon, it's nothing but a cheap imitation. With a snort, Cobalion's forehead began to glow, condensing a sharp blade of brilliant blue energy. Sacred sword. Yet, he didn't immediately attack. Instead, he locked eyes with Hikaru, who was still seated and eating curry next to Calyrex. You, human, is this your dream? And is that unruly water dragon your Pokémon? Hikaru could only give a polite but awkward smile. Ah, now he was being interrogated directly. Hey! Well then. Hikaru swallowed a mouthful of curry. Let's finish eating first. Chapter 163. Yes, Walking Wake is my Pokémon, but right now, I can't control it. About the disruption it caused in your dreams, I sincerely apologize, Hikaru said earnestly. Now that the actual parties had come knocking, an apology was only right. Even if it had only been a dream and hadn't caused real damage, it had still stirred up quite a bit of trouble. Then, Hikaru dished up 3 more bowls of curry and offered them to the Swords of Justice. The fragrant aroma tempted even their own self-control. Their instincts screamed that eating this food would benefit their training immensely. But the whole point of training was to overcome instinct. So the trio held back and didn't immediately accept. Cobalion studied Hikaru's expression, observing his calm and sincere demeanor. The hostility in its gaze gradually faded. We'll set the curry aside for now. Back to the matter at hand. What do you mean you can't control it? Walking Wake and I aren't in the same region right now. It was only able to enter your dreams because it's currently in the Interlink Forest. What? The Interlink Forest? Cobalion's eyes widened. Human, how do you know about that place? What are your intentions? The legend of the Interlink was considered a secret among the Swords of Justice. Although anyone could find a Pokeball-shaped forest in the center of Unova on a map, going there would only take them to an ordinary central forest. The true Interlink was hidden within essentially a dimensional pocket. Such mystical places weren't unheard of in the Pokémon world. Because humans couldn't reach the Interlink, nor enter the Dream World, Pokémon considered it a sanctuary, a safe haven where they could rest and heal their hearts, no matter what hardship they faced in the real world. If you ask my intentions. Hikaru paused to think. Maybe trying to obtain a seedling from the Tree of Entanglement was a kind of intention? I have a new question, Cobalion said. Why are you even in the Dream World? This is a sacred place for Pokémon, it shouldn't be accessible to humans. And when you saw us, you weren't even surprised. Legendary swordsman Cobalion, Terrakion, Virizion, Hikaru said with a friendly smile, naming them effortlessly. The moment Dowblade held in Walking Wake's maw heard that, it perked up excitedly. Whoa whoa whoa! The swordsmen I was looking for are right in front of me? Due to certain special circumstances, I know things that others might not. But your names aren't exactly a secret, right? I entered the dream world by chance. If you want a reason, it probably has to do with an item I made. Have you ever heard of something called a type plate? Type plate? Virizion frowned and looked to Terrakion, who shook his head. Nope. Never heard of anything like that, not even from those scummy humans. It's a legendary item, said to be bestowed upon the world by the god of creation. Type plates exist across various regions. Some ancient people even tried to replicate them. Hikaru finished his curry and formally introduced himself. It's a pleasure to meet you, Swords of Justice. I'm Hikaru from Ekrutik, a craftsman who creates wondrous tools. I entered this dream world because I created a symbolic plate, imbued with the likeness of a Pokémon known as Unown. According to ancient legends, it's said to be able to create all things. As for Walking Wake, you probably won't believe this, but it somehow traveled here from the distant past. He gave a brief explanation of Walking Wake's origins. When the Swords heard that this so-called legendary dragon truly came from ancient times, their attitudes became a bit more complicated. As Pokémon that had wandered the world for over 1,000 years, they knew that some Pokémon could travel through time. But such Pokémon weren't from Unova. They had only encountered one long ago, by chance. The tale of the symbolic plate was harder to grasp. Unown didn't exist in Unova, so they couldn't fully comprehend Hikaru's explanation. But they could understand this: if Hikaru wasn't exaggerating, the plate he forged possessed power rivaling ancient relics of legend. How could you possibly create something like that? Terrakion asked with disbelief. If ancient craftsmen could, why not modern ones? Hikaru replied simply. This gave the trio pause. Modern humans chased after technological advancements, creating tools that seemed to defy reality. Even the Swords of Justice had begun to forget that ancient humans once wielded mysterious powers. Those people hadn't disappeared completely, but their influence had faded. Now here was a young man in the dream world, claiming to wield the same mastery as the ancient artisans. Hey, what is that? Cobalion, just about to brush the matter aside, suddenly noticed what Hikaru had placed under the curry pot. Though unfamiliar, it radiated strong dragon-type energy and life force. No mistaking it. It had to be the lightstone Qrem spoke of. Is that the lightstone? Cobalion asked urgently. Who would have thought something lost in the real world would randomly turn up in the dream world? When Walking Wake had caused chaos earlier, the Swords of Justice had assumed it was the legendary dragon. They'd even gone to the giant chasm to consult Qrem, who told them the truth. That's right, Hikaru nodded. Then pointed inside the house. There's also a dark stone in there. Just those words, and the reality of it, stunned the trio into silence. The blue sword glowing on Cobalion's forehead slowly faded. It cautiously removed the light stone from beneath the pot. Though they'd never seen the dragons themselves, the power within the stone was unmistakably real. Are you the hero? Terrakion stepped forward, looking up at Hikaru. A group of humans in Unova are currently searching for a hero and a king. I am the king. Calyrex raised its hand proudly, still with curry smeared on its face. Dowblade chimed in with cheerful sounds. We've got another king here too. What's going on? A craftsman and a king? What are you, the heir to some obscure country? Virizion looked at Calyrex, frowning. And you're a king too? But kings are a human thing, right? I am the king of abundance who once ruled ancient Galar. Calyrex straightened up, wearing a gaze full of mystique, though it was clearly just an act. Virizion tensed up. Calyrex's unnervability had triggered. This is the majesty of a king. Calyrex tilted its massive head with pride. In its mind, it imagined riding the Swords of Justice using the Reins of Unity. That would look so cool. But alas, these noble swords weren't so easily bound. Hikaru chuckled. Unnerve was a trait even Galar's wild birds had it just stopped foes from eating berries. But on Calyrex, it somehow exuded a bizarre sense of authority. Hero, craftsman, king, a time-traveling ancient dragon, a Pokémon king, and what looks like a pair of talking swords, Terrakion laughed. You're a weird bunch. Speaking of, that ancient dragon said something about recruiting Pokémon for some king. It tried to bite and drag some away before we stopped it. Was that your idea? Terrakion gave Calyrex a teasing look. The latter sighed when Walking Wake returned. It had mentioned trying to drag others off. But Calyrex quickly changed the topic from how it tried to recruit, to why. Living on my land means delicious food. Even in the dream world, eating it benefits your real body. Initially, I just wanted to trade these crops for special seeds, win-win for all parties. And it helps me gather faith. Faith? Terrakian echoed, confused. But Calyrex spoke with surprising honesty. The fields didn't lie like that enormous glowing blue cauliflower. Maybe this bunny-headed king really was onto something. Terrakian turned back to Hikaru and grinned. Let's put the territory discussion aside for now. Let's talk about that dragon of yours. You clearly know Unova's founding legends, and since this so-called imposter is your partner, and you're currently separated in the real world, you need to hear this. Terrakian then explained everything they had learned. Wait, what? Hikaru was stunned. Thanks to Walking Wake's antics in the dream world, it had ended up on Team Plasma's radar. They were currently searching for the legendary dragon. The problem was they were describing Walking Wake, down to its very lively demeanor. Translation: Rowdy Troublemaker. It was an ancient power Pokémon, after all. No wonder the swords called it a fake. Well, I guess that works out, Hikaru mused. The Entrelink isn't exactly a place humans can easily reach. If Walking Wake stays there, they'll never find the real legendary dragon. Virizion smiled slyly. The Swords of Justice already knew the truth, there weren't just two dragons. The Icy Qrem was the hidden third. When they first heard people were hunting it, Qrem had panicked but relaxed once it realized the descriptions didn't match it at all. A substitute victory. Let them chase the decoy. Of course, Team Plasma still had no idea which of the three dragons Walking Wake actually was. Hikaru was baffled by their timing. Isn't this too early? Aren't they supposed to go after Qrem only after Deoxys fails to control Reshiram and Zekrom? If you're jumping to Qrem now, what happens to the black and white two protagonists? Terrakian nodded solemnly. We do sympathize with Qrem. We don't like Walking Wake much either. But we all agree on one thing, powerful Pokémon shouldn't be tools for humans. You need to come to Unova and bring your partner back before things get dangerous. Thanks. That's very helpful, Hikaru replied seriously. He glanced at Walking Wake, who still bore a hostile expression and let out a few frustrated growls. They ganged up on me. We have to fight before we can talk about peace. At first, we thought you were a villain. Now, we see it's just your wild ancient bloodline. You don't understand right from wrong. Cobalion narrowed its eyes. If you insist on battle, then so be it. Terrakian, Virizion stepped back. Turning, Cobalion realized. Terrakian and Virizion were already by the curry pot, chatting with Hikaru about the food. What are you two doing? Virizion, didn't you say it's a one-on-one fight? We're staying out of it. Terrakian, this curry smells amazing. We're just testing the flavor. Hey, human, it's glowing, is that safe? Compared to Cobalion, the leader, Terrakian and Virizion were more easygoing. While wary of humans, they could still recognize a kind soul who treated Pokémon well. Humph. So be it. Last time, I let my guard down and you bit off my horn. This time, I won't hold back. Rah! Walking Wake held one of Doublade's swords in its mouth, the other gripped in its claws, clearly ready for battle. Doubblade, equally excited, vibrated with eagerness. This was a chance to see the sacred sword technique and participate. Still, it warned Walking Wake not to get too excited and breathe fire. A flamethrower or fire fang and it'd be done for. Humph. So it's not one-on-one after all. But fine, since I once rallied allies to chase you down, I'll let you bring your swords too. But imitation swords won't beat the real sacred sword. Cobalion summoned a shining blade of blue energy on its forehead, and at the same time, Doublade's eyes glowed with psychic power. A flurry of razor-sharp blades emerged from all directions. The swords surged with mental energy, and with a swing from Walking Wake, they slashed outward in a flash. Cobalion jumped. That move, Blade. That wasn't Walking Wake's attack, it was the swords. The dragon was just swinging wildly. But the true technique came from the two Pokémon swords themselves. What he thought were mere tools turned out to be real Pokémon, and ones with this level of swordsmanship. Cobalion's eyes gleamed with interest. This battle wasn't against the dragon. It was against the swords. Cobalion raised its glowing sacred sword as waves of blade energy rose around him. Cobalion used sword dance. Let me see your true strength, unnamed Pokémon. Chapter 164. Cobalion truly lived up to his title as leader of the Swords of Justice. His ferocious sacred sword strikes, blazing with sharp blue light, rained down like a tempest, carving deep scars into the ground with each blow. Watching this, Hikaru couldn't help but marvel once again. Pokémon were the real monsters. The strength of their flesh far surpassed any natural stone or soil. And then there were those rare humans who could physically keep up with them. What kind of monsters were they? But mid-battle, Cobalion noticed something strange. His sacred sword was still effective against Walking Wake, but when it struck the two blades, the power of the fighting-type energy seemed to vanish entirely, leaving only raw impact force. Meanwhile, Terrakion, who had been sampling the radiant curry, suddenly went still. His usually jolly and carefree eyes sharpened into razor focus. He felt a strange sensation blooming inside him, happiness, lightness, and most of all growth. Yes, growth. From ancient times, the Swords of Justice had trained endlessly to obtain power and protect other Pokémon. But as time passed, the rate of growth slowed, and eventually plateaued. Reaching higher levels became nearly impossible. But now his physical abilities were clearly improving. This feels like a dream. Wait, it is a dream. Terrakion smacked his lips. Human, what is this food? This is no ordinary curry. It's made with special vegetables, cooked with my unique methods. It's extremely effective, Hikaru explained, gesturing toward Calyrex. Everything the king said earlier, it's all true. Terrakion fell silent in thought. Beside him, Virizion had also started eating and wore the exact same expression of disbelief. This feeling? Virizion murmured, eyes wide. It's like I've returned to my younger days, when I wasn't yet strong, and every day of training brought noticeable progress. My psychic power is increasing. Virizion's forehead glowed faintly with psychic energies and headbutt. Thank you for the food, she said sincerely. From the moment they had first smelled this curry, their instincts had screamed that it would benefit them. But they hadn't expected it to be this profound. Haha. All right, I believe you're no ordinary human anymore, Terrakion laughed heartily. Nearby, the battle was already at its climax. Oh ho! Your Pokémon is something else. He actually got Cobalion to unleash that powerful of a sacred sword. Terrakion asked while savoring another bite of curry. The way Dowblade used Psy blades was unique. He'd never seen such swordplay. Those two blades are likely one Pokémon, Virizion commented while enjoying a soft, melting Venus carrot. In Unova, we don't have such species, but there are similar Pokémon with split forms. Nope. Dowblade isn't native to Unova, Hikaru clarified, adding more veggies into the stew. They're from faraway Kalos and Galar. Mine was brought to Johto long ago by a traveling merchant who sold rare Pokémon. Ah, captured and sold by ancient humans, Terrakion scoffed. Those merchants always chased profit, catching rare Pokémon and selling them at high prices. Typical human behavior. Unova didn't have many ancient kingdoms, unlike other regions. Seems like something's wrong with Cobalion's attacks, Virizion added, noticing that his strikes against Dowblade had no elemental impact. His sacred sword loses its fighting type force. Could it be? Dowblade is a steel/ghost type Pokémon, Hikaru explained. Fighting type attacks don't work well on it. But since it has a physical form, it can still be hit. And yes, it can learn sacred sword too. What? Terrakion jumped. It can use sacred sword. For a long time, sacred sword was exclusive to the trio. But starting in Gen 6, the Hunch line was granted access to it. Hikaru explained how Dowblade had been using Brick Break as a base to develop sacred sword, and then politely asked the swords if they'd be willing to teach the move. In return, he'd cook more of that divine curry. That was a tempting offer. Food that helped them grow plus a unique Pokémon who might wield their signature move? Both were highly attractive prospects. But it wasn't up to just them. The three of us train, grow, and protect the world together, Virizion said. If you want to learn sacred sword, you'll need Cobalion's approval. Cobalion, meanwhile, had overheard their conversation. His eyes narrowed. He now understood why his sacred sword had been ineffective. A grin spread across his face. The blue blade vanished and transformed into silver energy. Iron Head. He slammed forward with devastating force, knocking Walking Wake tumbling across the ground. The two blades it held, one in mouth, one in claws, flew out of its grip. Furious, Wake lashed its tail-breaking swipe. A wide, sweeping strike that reduced the opponent's attack stat. TCH. My powers weakened, Cobalion muttered. But immediately, a fiery aura surged around him. Work up a move that boosted both attack and special attack. RAAH. Walking Wake let out a mighty roar, reducing both of those stats again. Humph. Cobalion grunted, annoyed by the stat changes, but his interest in Dao Blade was growing. Blue light gathered once more on his forehead sacred sword. The two swords spun midair and began rotating rapidly. They glowed brightly and slashed toward Cobalion in a spinning formation. Fury Cutter, cancelled. The rapid spin assault caught Cobalion off guard. What is this technique? The attacks weren't powerful, but the technique was terrifying. There were no gaps. The blades wove intricate patterns, perfectly cancelling end lag between strikes. Da Blade's endless crafting, carving, and battle refinement had elevated its precision and control. First glimpses. Sudden insight. One idea sparked another. Then, a flash of clarity. And finally awakening of a previous life? Yuwu. Brick break, cancelled. Time to unleash the greatest swordplay in history. Chivalry mastered. Ah! Virizion and Terrakian's eyes bulged. This isn't swordplay. What kind of Pokémon is this? Only a Pokémon that is a weapon could fight like this. No way they could imitate it, their spines would snap from trying to cancel lag at that frequency. How'd you train your Pokémon to fight like that? Virizion asked Hikaru, still stunned. Hikaru scratched his chin. I just made a random comment. It built the entire sword fighting model itself. Genius, right? Absolutely, Terrakian replied instinctively. Such attacks had huge value in real battles. They left opponents stunned, unable to even retaliate. Of course, the downside was low damage. Fury Cutter was a bug-type move, meant for speed over power. Using Brick Break instead slowed the attack rate. Cobalion looks really fired up, Virizion observed. Indeed, the always stoic Cobalion was now grinning, genuinely enjoying himself. Though he struggled to block both swords, his excitement only grew. Meanwhile, Dao Blade started using Shadow Sneak mid-assault. Cobalion's eyes widened. This is how a little knight fights? No, this is. Silver light erupted from his body. Hat. Metal burst. The last damage received was returned tenfold. A rain of silver light, like razor blades, blasted Dao Blade midair, sending it tumbling. Cobalion seized the moment. He dismissed Sacred Sword and charged with Iron Head. But before impact, a massive tail slammed into him, Dragon Tail. Cobalion was sent flying across the field. And then Flamethrower. The field erupted in a sea of fire. But the next second, that fire was cleaved in half. A blue Sacred Sword sliced through the flames cleanly. Walking Wake let out a low growl, unhappy, but shaken. Da Blade's eyes went wide with disbelief. The flames were cut. Flame-splitting swordplay. I nearly forgot about you, Cobalion said coldly, turning back to Wake. But I've lost interest in you, ancient dragon. This battle ends here. His expression shifted. He looked at the slowly rising Dao Blade. His attack earlier hadn't caused much real damage. Nearby, the two other swordsmen were watching in amazement. Cobalion gave an unexpected compliment. Your swordplay is rare. Your talent is exceptional. He glanced at Hikaru. I heard everything that humans said. Now that you've crossed blades with a real sacred sword, I bet you've felt it too. If you can really grasp it. Yuwu. Dao Blade tilted slightly, ribbon scratching its hilt. Indeed, the more it used Brick Break cancels, the faster and cleaner it became. During its clash with the blue sacred sword, it had felt something stirring deep inside. Both blades suddenly glowed with power, massive, shining bright, but then the light vanished. Dao Blade blinked in confusion. Cobalion's pupils narrowed. After a pause, he finally spoke. I'll teach you the secret of Sacred Sword. Pokémon named Dao Blade. Do you want to become a sword of justice? Chapter 165. Cobalion agreed? That was fantastic news. Not just Hikaru, Terrakian and Virizion both showed visible joy at the decision as well. As for Calyrex, the big-headed bunny had watched the entire sword duel between the Pokémon with relish. It made for excellent mealtime entertainment. The cancel-style multi-slash technique from Dao Blade was new even to it, and its oversized head filled with all kinds of thoughts. When it came to swordplay, Galar had its own king of swords, after all. If Behemoth Blade could be used with cancel chaining, wouldn't that be terrifying? Eternatus would have to scream unbeatable. Nothing from space should ever mess with Galar again. It had the cancel version Sword King defending it. What an ignorant country bumpkin from space. Haha. A new Sword of Justice joins the team, though its appearance is a bit odd, Terrakian chuckled. But that power earlier, there's no mistaking it. That was Sacred Sword. Even if it's not the same as ours, every Pokémon that can use Sacred Sword forges a unique blade of its own. Long ago, we took on a disciple, he continued. We had high hopes. Cobalion believed the little guy would inherit our legacy and carry the name of the Sword of Justice to new heights. But now, it's gotten a little impatient. Despite gaining great power through long training, it still can't properly use Sacred Sword. If your Pokémon can learn it through proper training, perhaps that path might offer inspiration for our pupil as well. This was mutually beneficial, and Hikaru knew exactly who this disciple was, Keldeo. Keldeo, the cold Pokémon, looked like a small unicorn with a flowing mane. Its ability was justified, and it was considered the fourth Sword of Justice, a mythical Pokémon. In the movie Qrem vs. The Sword of Justice, it was shown to have been separated from its parents during a forest fire and adopted by the trio, becoming their junior member. Under their tutelage, Keldeo grew strong but ultimately left them. Because, in the games, it's a mythical Pokémon usually only distributed through special events, which is why it doesn't appear with the others. Except in Sword and Shield in the Crown Tundra, once the player captures the trio and cooks curry at the small island southwest of Ball Lake, Keldeo will appear. Hikaru mused. Right now, Keldeo still hadn't mastered Sacred Sword. Yes, that was how the movie began. Keldeo didn't know Sacred Sword or Secret Sword. It had only its fiery ambition and eagerness to prove itself by challenging Qrem to earn the title of Sword of Justice. But in the end, it fled in fear, sparking Qrem's fury. The true Sacred Sword, as taught by the trio, was nothing short of miraculous. Even in the film, Virizion was shown slashing away a aura sphere using Sacred Sword. To become a Sword of Justice, you must possess a kind heart, one that longs to protect others, Virizion said with a smile. So even if Cobalion agrees, there's still a trial and training period before true recognition. A heart that protects. Hikaru smiled wryly. Dowblade was a righteous little knight but also a stealth master. Who knew what kind of values that ancient kingdom had taught it? Still, its ideals were noble. So Hikaru, like a parent, explained Dowblade's goals to the duo. Then Virizion finally understood why Dowblade called Hikaru king. To build a new country where people and Pokémon can live freely together. That's a lofty dream. Virizion nodded. You say you're not a hero, but isn't that dream exactly aligned with the truth and ideals of the legendary dragons? Terrakian added teasingly, but lofty dreams can easily go astray, like those strangely dressed humans we've seen in Unova. Still, you're way better than them. Modern society still has a few small kingdoms, sure, Hikaru replied. But I'm not interested in founding one in some remote place. That's Dowblade's dream, not mine. I just want to create a place like a paradise where Pokémon and people can live in harmony. He'd already thought of a way to fulfill Dowblade's weird found a kingdom dream. It wasn't like he was actually going to go stake a claim on some land. Create a paradise? Bold talk, Terrakian laughed. If such a place exists, it's the dream world itself. You're absolutely right, Hikaru said with a smile that made them both pause. Cobalion turned back to Dowblade, ignoring Walking Wake scratching its ears. Listen well, Cobalion began. To use Sacred Sword, your heart must be clear. Gather all your strength into a single point. In your mind, shape it into a blade. When you swing, there must be no hesitation. Imagine cutting through everything. The best training partner is solid rock. At first, you smash the stone. But as you improve, you should be able to not break it yet leave deeper and smaller sword marks. When you can do that, you'll have mastered the true Sacred Sword. But there's no such rocky terrain on this sky island, he added. So I can only tell you the theory, we can't practice it here. Usually, he wouldn't offer this much. Sacred Sword wasn't something easily taught, it required time and enlightenment. But Dowblade's unique swordplay had truly intrigued him. During our battle, I felt your heart, Cobalion continued. You possess a righteous spirit, flawed, but pure enough. That's why I agreed to teach you the essence of the Sacred Sword. Sure, this little knight's tricks were a bit shady, but its ideals were noble. Even if its fighting style caused high blood pressure, that wasn't a big deal. But only when you truly understand the weight of a sword and how to wield it can you be accepted as a sword of justice. Dao Blade blinked blankly. What does a clear heart even mean? Probably means don't overthink, Hikaru said. Focus like you do when you're crafting. Just think of it like carving. That's a similar kind of concentration. He pointed at an empty clearing. That spot's perfect for your training. Cobalion turned. That? There are no rocks. That's fine. We're making them now. Hikaru looked to Terrakion. Terrakion, can you help by stacking some boulders with rock slide? Sure, I guess. But you're not expecting me to keep generating rocks forever, right? Terrakion grumbled, using rock slide to form massive stone pillars. Then Hikaru looked to Calyrex. The bunny's belly bulged from the final bowl of curry, face satisfied. Want me to add some ancient ruins stones? Sure, I'll get them. Calyrex's eyes glowed blue. Bricks and ruins piled near the ancient forge lifted into the air and fused with the rock slide boulders, forming a simple stone hut with no ornate decoration. Now came the destruction part of the crafting show. Hikaru fetched a mirror. Even though the dream world couldn't connect directly to the reverse world, its materials could still be obtained here, making things easier. Using secret power on a structure made from reverse world materials. The door of the stone house flashed brightly for a moment then faded. Hikaru stepped in first. The swords of justice exchanged glances and followed. But once they crossed the threshold, they stopped. From the outside, the house looked small. Inside, however, it was enormous. A vast labyrinth of solid black stone surrounded them, rugged terrain, strange elevation changes. The walls looked hard. A fighting-type training maze, let's call it that. I'll activate the island's power to shape this environment to suit rock and fighting-type Pokémon. Natural energy will continuously generate new boulders. With the labyrinth's mechanics, you'll be able to train here endlessly. This is my invitation and gift. The trio of legendary Pokémon wandered in awe. Terrakion broke a sweat. So that's what he meant by creating a paradise, including the dream world? This power, was this kid secretly some spatial god's avatar? They all gave Hikaru a suspicious look. Still, the place was perfect for sword training and came with energy-packed food. The dream world's training could carry over into the real world. The swords of justice, who had lived for over 1,000 years, were masters of its mechanics. After a brief exchange, we have a request. We want our disciple, Keldeo, to join us here too. Hikaru's eyes sparkled. A buy 3 get 1 free bonus? Hell yes! In his mind, a message popped up. Invited Pokémon, Cobalion, Terrakion, Virizion. Effect, with the swords of justice settled here, the Sky Island will massively expand. A training atmosphere will emerge. Move and ability training efficiency plus 100%, mental growth and comprehension speed plus 30%. May cause certain Pokémon to develop illegal abilities or moves. Outside the training maze, near the ancient forge, a once dormant Larvesta egg began to shake. It glowed brightly, flames gathering into the shape of a small sun. The fire surged, tendrils of flame curling inward. A fluffy white caterpillar blinked sleepily, sniffed the aroma wafting from outside, and began slowly inching toward the door. Chapter 166. Even while still inside its egg, Larvesta could already sense the world outside. It had heard things and even vaguely seen the sources of the nurturing forces around it. At that time, it didn't understand what those things were, but instinctively, it felt close to them. That familiar presence, it was up ahead. Larvesta crawled its way behind the large pot of simmering curry. It quietly peeked out and saw Calyrex and Walking Wake lingering near the entrance to the training maze in the distance. Mara. Staring at the backs of the two Pokémon, Larvesta confirmed they hadn't noticed it and sneakily dipped its head into the pot. Those two Pokémon gave it a sense of familiarity, as if they had raised it. But what Larvesta longed for even more was a pair of warm human hands. Although it didn't know why it understood what a human was, it was absolutely certain. A human had spoken to it, telling it to grow up strong and healthy. Yes. In order to grow, it had to eat. The fragrance was coming from the food inside the pot, and there was still plenty left. Though it had only just hatched, Larvesta had quite the appetite. While no one was paying attention, it dug in voraciously. Legends say Larvesta feeds on flames, but many Pokémon also eat regular food, which benefits their growth. Full. Am I full? After slurping down a large helping of curry, Larvesta suddenly lifted its head, blinking its dopey blue eyes in a daze. Though it had tasted delicious and it felt full while eating, it was hungry again once it was done. What was going on? Larvesta couldn't figure it out. Its newly hatched little brain had no idea why this was happening. So it followed its instincts and the creeping hunger, plunging its head back into the curry. But as more curry was eaten, the level of food in the pot lowered, and Larvesta had to shove half its body inside to reach more. Then the pot began to turn red. The sweet curry had a special property that accelerated the growth of young Pokémon. Larvesta's inner power surged rapidly. But being so young, it had no idea how to control it. Especially within a dreamlike state, where a child's dreams often defy logic, the 5 red horns on Larvesta's body flared with flames. An intense heat began to melt the rim of the pot. The pot began to lose its original shape as Larvesta buried itself deeper into the curry, devouring it greedily. But the more it ate, the faster it grew. And the faster it grew, the more energy it needed, creating an endless cycle. Mera. The food was gone. Completely and utterly gone. Blinking its blue eyes for a while, Larvesta finally realized the dilemma. Huffing out puffs of flame, it saw that one side of the iron pot had already melted from the heat of its ability, Flame Body. That molten section faced toward Calyrex's farmland. There, a giant blue head of cauliflower came into view. Though it wasn't giving off a particularly strong aroma, Larvesta's instincts as a living creature stirred it was being drawn to a high-quality food source. Just as many Pokémon are attracted to rare, beneficial berries like citrus, Larvesta's body ached for nourishment. Crawling out through the melted side of the pot, it bumped into a round white stone on the ground. Twisting around to look, Larvesta realized it was the same stone that had given it so much warmth before. It looked like an egg. Maybe it had a Pokémon inside too. Then, it probably needed fire. With the innocent kindness of a child, Larvesta's 5 flame horns ignited again, arranged like a sun around its body. It gently tapped the light stone, whispering to it like an older sibling looking after a younger one. Mera Mera, it chirped softly, meaning something like, "Don't worry, I'll help you hatch." Then it spat flames onto the stone and instinctively twisted them into a vortex shape, forming a new move. The light stone was trapped in a fiery vortex. Mera. Larvesta's tone was cheerful, because its mood was bright. Wiggling its tiny bug body, it crawled toward the glowing cauliflower, sensing the emotions resonating from the light stone behind it, emotions of gratitude. That made it even happier. "You're welcome. That's what I'm supposed to do." Humming a tune from ancient times, it crawled onward toward the radiant blue cauliflower. It didn't know where the melody came from, but it had heard it long before it hatched. A song forever etched in its memory. As that soothing hum echoed, Larvesta reached the field. Somehow, perhaps influenced by the song, the crops began to swell and grow. But Larvesta couldn't control its power, and the growth accelerated too quickly. Leaves that hadn't yet sprouted from radishes dried up and started to burn. Walking Wake, how in the world did you even get your head stuck in there? At the training maze, Walking Wake had tried to stick its head into the cabin out of curiosity. Though the doorway was wide enough for the swords of justice to pass freely, Terrakion, the largest of them, fit easily. Walking Wake's massive crest and bulky frame made it difficult. Now its head was completely wedged in and stuck. Awoo! Its twin tails thrashed wildly. Inside, its head spun like a top, searching for a way out. Outside, Calyrex was trying to pull it free with Psychic, but with little success. Thankfully, the Swords of Justice and Hikaru noticed the situation and tried to comfort it. Calyrex wiped the sweat off its oversized head. "Can't you give me a moment of peace? Wait, why does it smell like something's burning?" Calyrex had just begun working with Hikaru to widen the cabin entrance when its nose twitched. The radishes. The ancient seeds. The whole field was ablaze. A small figure moved through the flames toward the prized glowing cauliflower. "No. That's my pride and joy." Calyrex flung its hoe aside and used Psychic to teleport instantly to the farm. But it was already too late. Larvesta had climbed onto the cauliflower, which was moments away from catching fire. Desperate, Calyrex raised both hands. Though its Psychic wasn't fully recovered, it summoned vapor from both hands like magic, creating a gentle mist. From afar, it looked like Calyrex had turned into a sprinkler. The mist splashed onto the burning crops. Ashes sank into the soil, and the surviving plants began to sprout anew. This was the move life do. Mera. Larvesta, mid-chomp into the glowing cauliflower's skin, was soaked by the water-type move. Steam burst off its body. It shook its flame horns in protest, but in the next moment, it was lifted into the air by Calyrex's psychic. Calyrex used a strong psychic blast, but unlike before, it didn't feel drained afterward. This was thanks to the stat-boosting effects of the bright cuisine, and also because the three swords of justice had settled in. Their presence brought more faith to Calyrex. Not worship, but simply being known was enough to grant it energy. That passive faith was enough to sustain its daily life and abilities. Mara Mara. Larvesta pouted at having its meal interrupted, but the aura around Calyrex felt familiar and comforting. After all, back when it was still in its egg, Calyrex had used heal pulse to save its life. So Larvesta crawled up beside Calyrex, affectionately nuzzling it before turning right back around and resolutely heading for the cauliflower again. Wait! Hold it right! A spark of realization flashed through Calyrex's mind. It instantly flung another psychic wave to pull Larvesta away from the field. The little bug blinked and paused to think. Oh! You want to play tag? But I'm really hungry right now, so I'll play later. I need to eat first. Chirping to itself, Larvesta nuzzled Calyrex again and then suddenly noticed that Calyrex's big round head looked a lot like the glowing cauliflower. Hey? Is this food too? Larvesta, being quite large, toppled Calyrex over and bit down on the big leafy head to test it. Larvesta used Bug Bite. It's super effective against wild Calyrex. Then, Calyrex was burned by Flame Body. Chapter 167. Help! Save me, my friend Savior King! Calyrex's telepathy surged into Hikaru's mind just as he and the Swords of Justice finished dislodging Walking Wake's massive head from the maze doorway, only to look up and see Calyrex ablaze in the distance. The king's on fire. That was not an exaggeration, it was literal. Walking Wake, use water pulse. Hikaru first thought of using steam eruption, but then realized that might just turn Calyrex into a literal boiled bunny king. Walking Wake opened its jaws wide, firing a torrent of rippling water. It slammed into the flaming Calyrex like a summer cold shower. The fire went out, but the king's entire head and body were now soaking wet and scorched black in places. A strange creature also fell off Calyrex. It seemed the water pulse had thrown both Pokémon into confusion. Calyrex's eyes were spinning in opposite directions as he plopped onto the ground, shaking his massive head. The unknown creature flopped around nearby, trying to get up but unable to find the right direction due to confusion. Larvesta. Hikaru approached and recognized the charred bug. But how did a Larvesta get here? He glanced at the distant ancient forge, rushed inside, and sure enough, the egg of Volcarona was gone. So it hatched this quickly. Hikaru was stunned. He hadn't been monitoring the egg closely, just letting the lightstone act as a surrogate heater. Even with the hatching knowledge he'd gotten from Gold, he wasn't a certified breeder. He didn't have Gold's talent of just hugging an egg and popping it open like a microwave. Then again, maybe the miraculous bright cuisine helped. The food's culinary energy could accelerate hatching, sure, but he had eaten the food, not the egg. Why would that speed up the process? Well, maybe not everything about Pokémon needs to make sense. Looking over at the pathetic state of Calyrex, who had scarfed down a lot of curry and powered up his psychic, Hikaru guessed the reason he got flattened was simple: 4 times weakness to bug. Psychic types just don't fare well against bug types. Some powerful psychic Pokémon can defend themselves with barriers, but Calyrex probably didn't have time to throw one up. Come to think of it, does Calyrex even know light screen or reflect? Here, this is a persim berry. It'll heal your confusion. Hikaru popped a pale red berry into Calyrex's mouth, followed by a blue one shaped like a strawberry. This is a rost berry. Heals burns. In the games, status effects can't overlap, but in the real world? Multiple conditions can happen at once, and if they stack too much, they're very dangerous. I thought my head was going to be eaten. Calyrex chomped down on the berries and quickly recovered from both confusion and burns, his expression deeply aggrieved. He truly thought he was about to die. But Hikaru reminded him that this was a dream world. His real body was still safe in the waking world. At worst, this was just a nightmare. Hikaru then handed a persim berry to Larvesta, whose mouth was hard to spot beneath its fuzzy dark face. And it was huge. A totem Pokémon, maybe? Among bug-type larva Pokémon, Larvesta was definitely a big one, fluffy and warm. But this one was even larger, to the point where it could practically wear reins and be used as a mount. No wonder it managed to flatten Calyrex. Smelling the berry, Larvesta, still hungry, hugged it and began munching right away, quickly curing its confusion. Mera! It stood up, looking around in a daze. Then it spotted Hikaru. Its big blue eyes blinked slowly. As it approached and gave him a poke with its little bug legs, it recognized that familiar aura and suddenly its face lit up with joy. Larvesta wriggled over and leapt into Hikaru's chest. Yes! This is the human! Maralala! The intense heat burst through his clothes in an instant. Hikaru was burned by flame body. Rost berry! Hikaru quickly grabbed a poke ball. With a flash of red light, Larvesta was sucked inside, and Hikaru took the chance to cure himself with a berry. The poke ball shook once, twice, 3 times. Click. Capture successful. Then pop. It opened by itself. Larvesta blinked in confusion, crawling back out of the ball. It didn't seem to understand what just happened. Its body was still emitting intense heat. Its 5 horns swayed, as if ready to burn anything that came close. I caught a Larvesta, but is flame body really this powerful? Hikaru glanced around and noticed the pot melted by heat, the light stone still spinning wildly in the center of the fire spin vortex. Not that it seemed bothered, it looked more like it was being tickled. And the rest of the curry's gone? Don't tell me. Larvesta ate it all. No wonder it was so powerful for a freshly hatched Pokémon. Made using a sculpture blessed by Arceus, nurtured by the light stone, and fed growth-boosting curry, of course it came out this strong. Mera! Larvesta let out a disappointed sound. It was still hungry. Larvesta, the torch Pokémon. In ancient times, it was worshipped as a creature born from the sun. It loves fire, and appears wherever there are flames to consume them entirely. Hikaru thought for a moment. Walking Wake, use flamethrower on that empty patch of ground. Hey! Walking Wake didn't really get it, but followed orders. A massive burst of flame roared from its jaws and the starving Larvesta's eyes instantly lit up. Mera! It shot forward like a rocket, astonishing the surrounding Pokémon, and dove straight into the flames. Its 5 horns spread open and devoured all of the fire in seconds. Mera! Larvesta squinted happily. The fire had fully restored its energy and Walking Wake's flame was delicious. That triggered another memory. Walking Wake had been the one to dig it out of the desert. Now, as Larvesta tried to nuzzle the very Pokémon that fed it, Walking Wake panicked. It had seen what happened to Calyrex and Hikaru had heard the words flame body. The ancient dragon, usually fearless, shook its head wildly and pointed its claws at Calyrex. Go cuddle with the king instead. He's in charge. But Larvesta thought it was just playing tag. Plus, the fire was so good it wanted to stay close. So it cheerfully began chasing Walking Wake in circles, looping around Hikaru and Calyrex. Walking Wake was shocked. It's so fast for a bug that crawls. Meanwhile, Hikaru was thinking. Larvesta eating fire reminded him of the flash fire ability. The only difference was that Larvesta didn't get a fire move boost after eating the flames. Also, it had only hatched after the Swords of Justice had arrived. Could the effects of Dream Island have something to do with this? Larvesta showing up here is strange. It's an extremely rare Pokémon. Cobalion approached. This one is very powerful, but it's still a child and doesn't know how to control its strength. The heat it emits could disturb others. It needs training and guidance. Long ago, people believed it came from the sun itself. It was revered as a solar messenger, but after too many forest fires, it was feared instead. Extremely rare? Sure, in Unova. But over in Paldea's deserts, they were about as common as store-brand soda on sale. Maramarla. Larvesta tilted its head, slowing its pursuit. It didn't understand what the other Pokémon were discussing, but having eaten its fill of fire, it was now in high spirits. It began to hum a little ancient tune, its body swaying side to side. Fire danced from its mouth, forming strange swirling shapes like a living painting made of flame. Hikaru raised an eyebrow at the artistic display. You listened to a melody from ancient times. You have learned music knowledge. Ancient song. Larvesta is gathering power. Hikaru froze. Ancient song. But as Larvesta hummed, the melody didn't match the real ancient song. It had no hypnotic effects. It wasn't a move, just a tune it had heard. Maybe it was something sung during the ancient city's time, when it was still in its egg. And what use was it to learn the ancient song anyway? Enter a Pokémon music festival? Actually, ancient song is Meloetta's signature move in Unova, but to humans, it's just a nostalgic and beautiful tune. In the games, you could learn it in Mist Ralton City's cafe from a guitarist. So Larvesta could hum the tune, but not use it. If it could with fire, that'd become fiery aria. That'd be too broken. Could it really learn something like that here? Then again, the anime did show a Larvesta flying with flame-powered propulsion from its horns. So, anything's possible in this dream island. Hikaru observed closely. As Larvesta absorbed the fire, its body temperature climbed, the air itself shimmered with heat, and even the ground beneath it began to burn. But Larvesta wasn't doing this intentionally, it thought it was just digesting. However, the messages Hikaru received said otherwise. At that moment, Larvesta's body began to shine with a brilliant light, illuminating the entire dream world. Due to the training atmosphere, Larvesta has learned to rapidly gather fire and convert it into energy, becoming akin to a mythical messenger of the sun. Its ability has temporarily changed. Flame Body Drought. Chapter 168. Well then, this wasn't just a move that changed. It was something much more critical, the ability. Larvesta's ability had changed to Drought. This wasn't just some regular transformation, it was an epic level upgrade. If it could switch abilities freely even outside the dream realm and keep that power after evolving. A Drought Volcarona? In the real world, the Drought ability did more than just bring sunlight, it slightly enhanced power too. If enough energy was gathered inside Larvesta, it could even rival the likes of Groudon's desolate land. And since it had Drought now, maybe it should learn Flamethrower too? Mara. Blissfully unaware of its transformation, Larvesta basked in holy light, like an insect bathed in radiance, a little mobile sun lighting up the entire area. As a side effect, however, the ground around it had become scorched and superheated, making it nearly impossible to approach. They say Larvesta's flames can reach up to 3000 degrees C, enough to melt through iron. That poor, deceased cooking pot was proof of that. You need to learn to control your power, little one. The Swords of Justice were discussing this drastic ability shift. They could clearly sense the intensifying sunlight drought. An ability that logically should never appear on Larvesta, no matter how noble its title as the sun's emissary might be. Calling this Larvesta gifted was an understatement. But in the real world, if a Larvesta this strong couldn't control its power, it could cause widespread destruction. As the leader, Cobalion decided to take it upon himself to teach the little bug. Larvesta felt drawn toward Cobalion. However, it instinctively feared Terrakion, who grinned at it broadly. That fear was elemental rock types were a natural predator. Cobalion patiently began explaining power control techniques. Larvesta blinked its big blue eyes, not understanding much, but it began spitting out fire and shaping the flames into waves. That's it. Shape the fire. Hold it steady. Don't let it run wild. Once you master that, apply the same principle to the energy inside you, learn to release and restrain it at will. Elements like fire, water, and ice lack fixed forms. Pokémon of those types often spend a long time mastering their moves. Larvesta didn't respond. It simply focused, playing with fire, showcasing the ancient artistic instincts it inherited from the ancient city. But Larvesta wasn't the only one affected by the training atmosphere. Inside the training maze, a strange force began to stir. While the Swords of Justice stood on alert, it was Hikaru the human who first sensed it. It was aura. A sphere of swirling blue light suddenly flared within the maze's entrance and shot out like a missile, wobbling and unstable, ready to explode at any second. Then Virizion stepped in just like in the movies. A glowing green sacred sword gathered on its forehead and, with the speed of wind through grass, cleaved the aura sphere in two. Boom! Boom! The unstable spheres burst in midair, scattering energy. From the maze emerged Dao Blade, blinking excitedly as it floated back and forth. It had just realized how to use a move it shouldn't even have been able to learn. Aura Sphere. Dao Blade couldn't wait to show off. Its ribbon arms swirled, trying to shape its aura again like rolling mochi. But this time, the glowing sphere exploded almost immediately, sending it spinning midair. Thankfully, fighting type moves don't harm ghost types much. It quickly recovered, though clearly disappointed. Aura Sphere. Hey! Dao Blade! Don't throw around such dangerous moves like that! Barked Terrakion. He scolded the overexcited ghost swords, who could only pout and promise it definitely, absolutely, wouldn't happen again. Hikaru muttered, good. I thought it was gonna say next time I'll land it. While Aura Sphere is supposed to never miss, if the move itself is cut off, then it doesn't matter. And its homing feature comes from Aura's ability to detect opponents. It's not magic. Still, for a newly learned move, it was very unstable. You. Dao Blade, still proud, turned toward Larvesta and jumped in fright. That intense heat, it hadn't seen the dream egg's hatchling before, and now Larvesta's flames felt like they could melt it just by proximity. You must overcome your weaknesses, Cobalion said softly. With enough training, even type disadvantages can be overcome, like how I cleaved through flamethrower with sacred sword. Cutting through fire. Doublade's eyes lit up with admiration. Hikaru had once learned about weakness insurance while crafting held items. With training, Pokémon could develop resistance to their weak points, improving endurance, durability, and stamina. There were examples in the anime, 2 unique individuals overcoming their natural weaknesses. Bugsy's Scyther, spinning with swords dance to deflect fire. Crystal Onyx from the Orange Islands, whose unique body made it resist water and even changed its typing. Aerodon that wasn't afraid of water, swimming daily due to knowing surf. For your next aura training, chant this to focus, Hikaru said to Dao Blade. The power of aura resides within me. You? Is that a move? No, it's a saying. An incantation used by the ancient aura guardians. Just then, the ever-present mist nearby finally began to part, drawing the Swords of Justice's attention. From the fog stepped a tall, humanoid figure. Mewtwo. Its face was still streaked with tears, but its expression had transformed, filled with joy and peace. Thank you, legendary blacksmith. Mewtwo had spoken at length with AI in the mist. Sorrow, pain, confusion, joy, the emotions of every trainer and Pokémon it had ever encountered were conveyed to AI. It was a confession. A final letter. A continuation of the things AI once dreamed of doing. From now on, I'll be her eyes. I'll keep meeting new people and Pokémon. I won't run anymore. I'm alive and I'll live. Mewtwo had found a new purpose. Its dark, uncertain future now glowed with hope. AI's soul was now a constant companion. Those who live must carry the dreams of those who have passed, and someday, when life ends, recount those stories to the ones they love. Still, Mewtwo had one small request. Will I be able to meet AI again through these 2 statues? They seem to have lost their power. It handed the statues to Hikaru, who examined them and found they had merely lost their spiritual energy, likely consumed in bridging the gap between this world and the next. No problem. I know a Pokémon from the spirit world. I can trade for some high-quality spirit cloth. Keep the statues. Once you have the cloth, you'll be able to see AI again. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mewtwo's joy overflowed. Its once worried heart now fully calm. Only now did it finally notice the other Pokémon 3 it had never seen before, and a beautiful flaming bug. Hikaru introduced them all, explaining that the Swords of Justice came from a distant land and had settled here to train. Hearing that, Mewtwo hesitated, and then asked. Does Calyrex's invitation still stand? Thou hast decided to stay and aid thy king. Calyrex exclaimed with delight. My confusion is gone. I know what I must do next. It's not time for me to relinquish my strength. This dream world, it's the perfect place to heal the heart. I want to train here. Double training, Mewtwo added with a smile. The dream training of the Swords of Justice had inspired it. Mewtwo also finally understood what Dr. Fuji had once intended, why he researched cloned Pokémon, why he sought unbreakable vitality. It all made sense now. It also made Mewtwo yearn for AI to live again. That feeling was overwhelming. Seeing her soul only intensified it. But Mewtwo was rational. It knew that repeating Fuji's work was wrong. However, it also knew that in the natural world, some Pokémon and artifacts could revive the dead. Time-traveling Pokémon, those blessed by rainbow light, and somewhere out there, a force that could share eternal life. Mewtwo would go seek that power. Please, build a maze for me too, Mewtwo asked Hikaru, who readily agreed. Soon, the new meditation maze was complete. This maze, suited for psychic and ghost types, was dominated by the psychic energy. Mewtwo's very presence would reshape it entirely. New resident Pokémon, Mewtwo, recruited by Calyrex. Effect: Mewtwo's residency expands Dream Island and spawns a psychic terrain, a naturally forming mental field that boosts psychic-type moves and enhances mental strength and psychic growth. Rare psychic-enhancing materials will also appear. Chapter 169. Mewtwo's decision to settle on Dream Island had strengthened the Dream Realm yet again. The Swords of Justice were intrigued by this artificially created Pokémon, and after a deep conversation, they found themselves surprisingly like-minded, especially when it came to criticizing humanity. After more exchanges with Calyrex, they became even more convinced, some humans simply couldn't be trusted. When it came to condemning humanity, the Swords of Justice were professionals. They didn't blame Dr. Fuji after all, they understood the desperate desire to reunite with someone lost. But as for Team Rocket, they gave them nothing but the lowest possible rating. As for Freezington Village, their judgment was more nuanced. Calyrex admitted some of the blame for the loss of faith fell on himself. Still, the ancients of Freezington were fairly devout. Even when the land stopped thriving, they kept making offerings, even at the cost of their own food, for many years. That sort of devotion couldn't be demanded indefinitely. People had to eat. If there was no blessing, then the rites would eventually stop. The world is vast, Cobalion said, nodding solemnly. Perhaps our journey of training shouldn't remain confined to Unova. We should travel to other regions as well. So that's why legendary Pokémon are always wandering around in later games, Hikaru thought. He stirred the curry pot and listened as the Pokémon conversed. Not only was Mewtwo setting off on a new journey, the Swords of Justice were also making plans to expand their travels. In fact, in the Crown Tundra storyline, they did just that. Right now, they discussed helping Calyrex with his farming experiments, developing the mythical soil and glowing flower. They would also assist in gathering faith, not for reward, but simply out of Pokémon solidarity. As famed Pokémon among their kind, the Swords of Justice had no trouble recruiting others from the dream world. However, Walking Wake had left a memorable impression on many Pokémon. Some might avoid Dream Island out of fear. And trying to lecture an ancient dragon on ethics? Forget it. From Walking Wake's own words, it was already being relatively mild. It only picked up valuable things it hadn't hunted other Pokémon. And besides, battles were common among wild Pokémon. What's so strange about that? In its era, there were even more fearsome hunters who didn't speak a word before starting deadly fights. In short, Hikaru warned, don't go barging into other Pokémon's dreams again. That grey dream you intruded into last time belonged to Kyurem. There's nothing valuable in his dream, just frozen wastelands and icy caverns. Walking Wake nodded cheerfully. You should have said I'd get Autoloot earlier. Then I wouldn't have gone treasure hunting in other Pokémon's dreams. That was a pain. With that, it no longer saw the Swords of Justice as enemies, they were now friends. As everyone chatted, Dowblade felt the world blur. It was nearing the end of this dream session. Mara. Larvesta, who had been merrily drawing with fire, finally noticed its trainer and the strange double-sword Pokémon fading. It crawled over, and Hikaru, seeing the firebug's power now calmed, smiled and waved. Don't worry, I'll be back to bring you home soon. Mara. Larvesta didn't yet understand that this was a dream. But its body suddenly began to fade faster than the others. It's overgrown. Its body has fully awakened, its dream is ending, Cobalion murmured. But for Pokémon, time within dreams was limitless. The Swords of Justice also decided to leave temporarily to help Calyrex recruit Pokémon willing to settle on Dream Island. Before Hikaru completely vanished, Mewtwo shared its thoughts and told him everything it knew about eternal life. Mewtwo, my faithful friend, where do you intend to seek eternal life? Calyrex didn't remember much, but a few memories were deeply engraved. A war from long ago, though not directly involving him, was one of those memories. Eternal life had been the central theme of that conflict. Calyrex's expression grew concerned. That kind of power wasn't something to be sought lightly. And though he hadn't known Mewtwo long, he understood that Mewtwo's past was full of pain, and now it was at a crucial turning point in life. I'm heading to the Oblivia region, Mewtwo said calmly. Ah! Kalos. Calyrex's words caught in his throat. His big eyes went blank. Wait, what? That's not what I was expecting at all. What? From some remote places, I've heard strange rumors. I used to ignore them, but now I must pursue them. Mewtwo smiled. In the far-off Oblivia region, also called the Lost Paradise, there's a legend of an ancient immortal ruler clad in golden armor. Hikaru's fading expression shifted instantly. Yo? Oblivia? That's the setting of Pokémon Ranger. In the Ranger side series, the technology was absurd. Hikaru recalled that even the anime had a few episodes showcasing their bizarre tools, especially those Rangers from Oblivia. They could draw summoning circles on the ground with their capture stylers and summon Pokémon from other regions. That wasn't technology, it was magic. Capture styler? Technological device. Mystic artifact, heavy check mark. Only Hoopa's rings could compete, but even they weren't as versatile. Though Hoopa's rings had raw power, stylers had more utility. Ultimately, human tech had limits, but these were beyond it. An immortal ruler, you say? Sounds familiar. Calyrex muttered, frowning. But if they were truly immortal, how did they disappear? No idea, Mutuo said. My friend, Calyrex suddenly grew serious. I may not know this Oblivia, but eternal life is not something to chase lightly. It's dangerous. When you learn the truth behind it, you may not want it anymore. What's the truth? I forgot. Calyrex's reply was disturbingly natural. But I do remember it's dangerous. Just like I remember Eternatus is dangerous. He really had forgotten even the reasons why people stopped believing in him, or what his feud with Eternatus was about. How could he remember some ancient war in Kalos? If you find any rare artifacts over there, bring some back, Hikaru requested naturally, also asking Mutuo to look into something else. Mark tablets. Mark tablets. They're unique to Oblivia. Stone slabs etched with mysterious symbols. They allow you to summon specific Pokémon regardless of time or space, but only if you once shared a bond with them. Mutuo was stunned. It hadn't even arrived in the region yet and Hikaru already knew all about its rare relics. Truly, the legendary Craftsman lives up to his title. Mutuo promised to investigate the mark tablets. Hikaru warned it that evil organizations were active in the area and advised it to disguise itself, lest they try to control it with some nonsense machine, because villains in this world always seem to invent absurd gadgets out of nowhere. Hikaru had a hunch, maybe Mutuo was about to end up in the Ranger storyline itself. He vaguely remembered a Mutuo being controlled in that plot. Hopefully it wasn't this Mutuo getting brainwashed. That one got defeated and calmed by a Ranger, but its strength was nowhere near movie tier Mutuo. Still, Hikaru didn't recall the Ranger arc too clearly. Golden armor, eternal life, yeah, there was something like that. A special episode had two weird items, the armor of Iin, which prolonged life, and a sword called Shun, which could deflect any attack. The villain Sach gave them to the Team Go Rocket grunt Natsuki, but the anime never explained their origin. Typical plot convenience. Just imagine Zacian carrying a sword that can reflect everything. OP much? I once built machines that controlled Pokémon, Mutuo said calmly. I know what to expect. Thanks for the warning about mind control tech. Psychic-type brainwashing was different from human brainwashing. Some tech, like Team Rocket's, used radio waves. Doesn't your shop sell any anti-brainwash gear? Oh, we do. Hikaru pulled out a sparkling charm. This is a Serenity Pendant. It blocks all debuffs and has a bonus mind-cleansing enchantment I added. One might not be enough, so take several. And the Amulet of Courage I gave you boosts willpower and suppresses negative emotions, also good against mind control. Some Pokémon have abilities like Aroma Veil, which can block mental attacks like Alcremie Ingular. And you could also try learning the sword's mental training. Clearing the heart strengthens the mind too. Unova region, deep within the ancient castle. Mara. Buried in sand, a beautifully fiery Pokémon with crimson wings hovered silently. Behind it was a mural that seemed to depict the sun. All around, ancient jars and tools had been perfectly preserved, as if still in use. Larvesta groggily awoke beneath the sand. It shook off the soft grains and blinked in confusion. Where was everyone? The trainer was gone too. Was this hide and seek? Larvesta started looking excitedly, hoping to find them in the ruins. But no matter where it crawled, every room was empty. Only ancient, crumbling ruins remained. Its joy faded. Anxiety bloomed in its heart. Stop hiding, come out already. I promise I won't eat all the food this time. In the deepest room, the majestic Pokémon turned around, startled by the voice. It hadn't heard a Larvesta call out in centuries. But today there it was. Larvesta kept searching. As it reached the final room, a burst of flame surged from the darkness. Ah! That must be Walking Wake's fire. It wriggled toward the flames excitedly, but emerging from the shadows was not the dragon. It was a blazing sun incarnate, Volcarona. URR. Volcarona flapped joyfully, scattering flaming scales like fireflies. It gazed warmly at the little one and called out with a sincere invitation. Come, little fire. Come join me. Don't be afraid, child. I don't know why you've awakened in this era, but would you like to be my son? I am your evolution, your kin. Wait, why is your light so bright? Larvesta blinked its blue eyes. Then firmly shook its head. Your fire looks tasty, but at most, you can be an honorary father. Also, your ability isn't even drought. Mara. Larvesta rejected the offer, then displayed its power. The pitch-black chamber lit up like midday, driving out every shadow. The sudden burst of sunlight scattered lurking Pokémon and shocked Volcarona. A drought, Larvesta. Our bloodline has never seen such a bug. Clack. A distant sound echoed. Volcarona turned its gaze. Humans, once again exploring these ruins. But their footsteps had yet to reach this sacred hall. They were just an ordinary dig team. Larvesta crawled into the last room. It stared at the fire god mural and the ancient pottery. Awe filled its eyes. Then, flapping its wings gently, Volcarona offered an irresistible proposal. Would you like to learn the ancient art of flamecraft? Chapter 170. The affairs of the dream world had come to an end for now, and Hikaru's planned journey to Unova had to be brought forward. He began recalculating his schedule and realized he now urgently needed a more stable way to enter the dream realm consistently. Originally, the plan had been to visit Mr. Iron in Johto first, then attend an art exhibition in Paldea, and by year's end, travel to meet with Drayden. The timeline had been quite generous until the Unova trip was added. Now it was a bit tight. Thankfully, the transportation system in the Pokémon world was highly developed. Before leaving the dream, Mewtwo offered to teleport Hikaru directly to the Olivine city port, saving him considerable travel time. The land of Shinto was too remote a sanctuary forgotten by the world of humans and Pokémon. Without any long-distance flying Pokémon in his team, traveling by land would have taken ages. Charizard flight services from Blackthorn City were a good option, but this was even better. Also, from Mewtwo, Hikaru learned something else: Ash Ketchum existed in this world too. Apparently, they had crossed paths once in Johto, and his companions were similar to those in the movies. However, the events of Hone had concluded 2 years ago. Due to the world's fusion effect, Ash's journey had deviated from the anime. He likely had minimal to no interaction with Team Magma or Team Aqua. At most, he might have encountered a few remnants. In the manga, even after the villainous teams were defeated, splinter cells continued operating. After all, these were extremist environmental groups. As long as people existed who believed in their ideals, these groups would never be truly gone. Meeting Ash in the Pokémon world was always a treat. Hikaru looked forward to it with growing anticipation. That said, Ash's travel speed remained a complete mystery. Realistically, even a streamlined gym challenge should take 6 months per region. Multiply that by 8, and that's 4 years. But Ash? He seemed to finish a region in just 2 to 3 months. It made no sense. Not to mention, even after all these regions, he never seemed to age. The flow of time across the entire world seemed frozen with him. Maybe that's the reason why all the protagonists had similarly youthful appearances, because of Ash's influence. And if that was the case, all the better. Don't scoff, this guy's literally connected to Arceus. Ash is the true god of time. If time has a deity, then it's him. The god of space? That's definitely Ingo from the Hisui era. Dialga and Palkia? Forget them, they can't compare. Just don't finish your journey too fast, Ash. I still want to experience a few movie plots with you. After all, the legendary items from the movies were always enticing. Without Ash acting as the plot catalyst, getting your hands on them was far more complicated. But the past was the past. Mewtwo's return and Lugia's awakening were already long over. Besides, some characters in those stories probably didn't have their problems solved by Ash in this world. The original protagonists of those storylines were still active, after all. Even the Clear Cliff event was missing Giovanni here, proof that this world's history had deviated quite a bit. Dowblade had been bragging ever since waking up. You guys totally missed out. New Pokémon, new buildings, aura moves, boom. Even Miss Lilligant, who was also training with Aura, was super envious. Then Dowblade tried to rope Grotle into its nonsense, saying it would teach him the ancient kingdom's secret art. Thanks to premium meals, rare medicine, and the protection of the Guard Stone, Grotle had grown faster, stronger, and sturdier than ever. Now, paired with Bullet Seed, he was practically a walking turret. Dowblade earnestly explained how to combo. Start with any random charging move. Fire it off, then backstep twice. Immediately switch to bullet seed and unleash it continuously. 2 minutes to master this ancient art of war. You too can be unstoppable. Grodel. This sounds cool, but bullet seed has random hit counts. You can't control how many seeds get fired. Dao Blade patted his shell. You'll get it with practice. Back in the day, the king's servant Marictus used to fight like this. Even pin missile worked the same way, always max hits. Let me guess, your Marictus had the illegal ability skill link. Hikaru mused. Looks like your old king was a magician too. Dao Blade. But this didn't surprise Hikaru. After all, he had a drought Larvesta. The Pokémon world was filled with mysterious powers. Some Pokémon were even naturally born with illegal abilities like Ash's Rockruff, who had the own tempo ability that shouldn't even exist in nature. Grodel looked conflicted. The technique sounded amazing, but it felt a little off. Dao Blade immediately countered. At first, I scoffed too. But if you don't learn a few life-saving combos, how will you protect yourself and your sweet newbie friends? This is the true way of the knight. Hikaru chimed in support. There's nothing wrong with using technique. This world is full of unique cases. Grodel, you are already one of a kind. Just look at Ash's Pokémon counter shield, reversal barrier, and all kinds of made-up moves that Professor Oak couldn't even find in the records. Gym leaders and champions started copying them. The double revenge counter. Decidueye's disguise outfit. Feather dance substitution, which of these were legal? Lily Gant perked up. Doublade's words inspired her. She had been fusing dance styles into graceful battle techniques. What if she went further? Combining Leaf Blade with close combat? And then adding Icy Spin or Clear Mist? Hikaru burst out laughing. Lily Gant was about to invent combo chains: hit once and trap your opponent in an endless air juggle. Morning passed quickly. The Pokémon all dove into their training. Over the next few days, Hikaru completed all the items Steven had requested. A new batch of tools was finished, granting Hikaru even more abilities. The forest Pokémon brought materials and hidden treasures. Steven and Regirock went on a mining spree and couldn't stop. Gekau delivered a haul from the mountains, Sky Blue Jade, one of the 3 unique Hisuian jades, and a pile of sparkling rare bones. As a reward, Hikaru gave it a rare candy. Specialist Series 3 key items. Cursed Spade, combined with Soul Sand to craft Sandy Gast, boosts Ghost Pokémon growth. If the holder faints after contact, the opponent's last move's PP becomes 0. Silk Scarf, boosts normal type move power by 20%. Indigo Chiffon, boosts dragon type ATK and SP. ATK. Heavenly Mantle, increases dragon type move PP. Dragon Veil, raises evasion by 2 stages in fog. Dragon Powder, raises defense and SP. Def for dragon types. Purple Chiffon, boosts ghost type ATK and Def. Shadow Gem, raises speed of ghost types in fog. Most items were focused on training rather than battle, but one gave Hikaru pause. Phantom Cloak. Originally exclusive to Drago Knight, it had been generalized to all dragon types here. A dusty yellow cloak that caused dragon Pokémon to recover HP when hit by ice-type moves. Blessed are the dragon types with 4x ice weakness. This thing would sell like hotcakes among dragon tamers. Hikaru also visited the Obsidian Ruins, where the steel giant continued refining flame forging techniques. Hikaru melted some iron to forge a black iron ball, and using his knowledge of choice specs, crafted. Black Glasses boosts dark type move power by 20%. Wise Glasses boosts special move power by 10%. Due to a lack of glasses crafting proficiency, these lenses were instead empowered by crystal and polishing methods. They increased precision and gently purified the mind. This made Hikaru frown a bit, especially while holding the black glasses. Dark types draw strength from malicious energy, that's how they scare ghost types. But if the glasses purify the wearer's heart, wouldn't that weaken them? Justice through darkness? Regirock's trading post had tons of new goods. Rock types had settled in the rocky ruins as miners and collectors. They found special plants to decorate the market. Smoky Yam. Hawnut Berry. Swords Dance Shroom. Critical Truffle. Sticky Shroom. All in pristine condition. Guedud said they found them in a swampy wetland near a frozen shrine. That shrine? None other than Regis' iceberg ruins. To get these crucial cooking materials, Hikaru planned to visit the shrine soon and officially befriend Regis, completing the legendary Titans trio. Rock, steel, and ice, the three essential crafting resources, would then be fully secured. After that, Hikaru took time to read Cyrus's mechanical handbook. Oddly, just skimming a few pages enlightened him to mechanical principles he'd never grasped before. Things that had previously eluded him now clicked into place. Gained, Cyrus's advanced mechanics knowledge. Bonus, Cyrus's mechanical insights. Bonus, wave signal theory. Gained, precision engineering allows handcrafting of intricate machine parts. Your part accuracy plus 100%. Chapter 171. Description. By delving into the mechanical manual provided by Cyrus, the leader of Team Galactic, deeper mechanical knowledge has been acquired. Only certain mechanical techniques can be obtained through specific materials, and by interacting with those skilled in machinery, more expertise in assembly and application can be gained. Different organizations and individuals have their own mechanical paths and styles. Team Galactic specializes in electromagnetic wave technology, which includes developing machines related to electromagnetic waves, using ancient ruins and myths for machine designs, and a particular talent for crafting bombs. Further research notes from Team Galactic could unlock even more wave-based mechanical knowledge and techniques. With Cyrus's advanced mechanical insights, one can now craft the magma booster, electric booster, escape button, EXP, share, zoom lens, and e-bullet gun. In combination with the mystic credential craft, high-tech electronic keycards can be produced, including the Team Galactic key, permit, plasma card, secret key, and Team Rocket elevator key. With this mechanical knowledge, it was finally time to begin crafting mechanical tools. Among official battle items, machine-type tools also occupy an important place. Some are even key to competitive combat. The escape button, emergency exit pack. These are powerful items frequently seen in battle strategies. And when it comes to evolution items, nothing can be mentioned without the two amplification boxes. These boxes only began appearing in the Sinnoh region in recent years and have been heavily studied since. However, the more research is done, the stranger their origins appear, traced back all the way to Hiswai, possibly a product of space-time distortions. In breeding and capturing, the charms developed by Galar and Paldea are cutting-edge mechanical products as well. The oval charm for easier egg hatching, the shiny charm for higher chances of encountering shiny Pokémon, the EXP charm to boost experience gains, the marked charm for encountering Pokémon with marks, and the anti-shake charm to improve Pokeball stability. Indeed, one of the most deeply embedded and invisible forces in the Pokémon world is this: the power of science is amazing. After all, craftsmanship has its limits. If one doesn't want to just become a materials trader, the only choice is to research more advanced technologies. Even in ancient times, people wielded mysterious science to create artificial Pokémon like Mage Arna. And in modern times, mechanical tools and scientific equipment have become more and more abundant. Even a time machine has been made. The earliest one wasn't even from Paldea, it was invented by an independent scientist in Unova's Opalacid city. At this point, even if Doraemon suddenly appeared in the Pokémon world, Hikaru wouldn't be surprised. Who knows, maybe Doraemon would even be indexed in the Pokédex as one of the Paradox Pokémon from the future. Recommended locations for acquiring mechanical knowledge: Team Rocket Base, Old Site, New Island, Old Mutual Laboratory, Professor Westwood's Lighthouse, Kanto, Jagged Pass, former Team Magma Hideout, Moss Deep City, former Team Aqua Hideout, Veilstone City, Team Galactic HQ, Ranger Union, Almia, Ancient Fortress, Oblivia, Striaton City, Makomo's House, Unova, P2 Laboratory, Unova, Azoth Kingdom, Kalos, Area 0 Laboratory, Paldea. Note: some of these locations come with significant risks. Please assess your own strength before attempting to visit. Most of these recommended places are former villain hideouts. Only a few are normal. Why not suggest visiting the regional professor labs? Is it because the research labs only offer Pokédexes? Figures: the real bearers of cutting-edge mechanical technology in the Pokémon world are the villainous organizations. When the heroes try to develop an item, it takes 10 days with minimal progress, while a certain trio from Team Rocket can work one part-time job at a festival and somehow build a Pokémon catching mecha the next day. The technological gap is obvious. So the most accessible source of mechanical knowledge might very well be Team Rocket's trio. Hikaru began forging parts in the workshop. The clanking of metal, flying sparks, handcrafting components without a lathe was time-consuming. but asking Charizard and the others to transport a lathe would be troublesome. The parts are heavy, just like those large sculptures. Plus, Hikaru was planning to leave Johto for the second half of the year and wouldn't return until next summer. For now, the lathe wasn't necessary. Once the parts were ready, Hikaru began fine-tuning them. At that moment, Dowblade floated over, curiously observing the pieces and overhearing Hikaru mumbling about the lathe. It couldn't help but ponder. With me a cutting master around, you're still thinking of ordering a machine? Wanna help with the precision work? Wanna try using Psycho Cut? Hikaru offered. Dowblade's blades immediately unsheathed. A wave of psychic energy stirred the air in the workshop. It spotted the weak point in the part. Dowblade unleashed Psycho Cut, though with minimal power, lightly grazing the weak spot and sending out a few metal shavings. It wasn't quite satisfied and focused deeply just like it did when slicing through stone tablets. An invisible mental wind stirred. Fighting-type energy surged across the blade. When it came to metalwork, fighting-type moves were the most effective metal parts counted as steel-type, after all. But Brick Break lacked precision, and wild swings risked damaging the blade. If only Aura could become a sword. Telekinesis smithing. Hikaru chuckled. Using psychic force to forge metal, wasn't that just telekinesis? For Dowblade, this was another unauthorized move. For now, it remained in the realm of fantasy. Soon, Hikaru began assembling the machine. Quickly, a key mechanical item came together, infused with Team Galactic's unique electromagnetic wave tech. Hikaru even inscribed mysterious runes on its back to keep the device active at all times, a fusion of mysticism and science. Mechanical tool, escape button. Effect: when the Pokémon holding this item is hit by a move, it immediately escapes from battle and is swapped out with another team member. Knowledge gained, +1. Advanced mechanical knowledge, this includes follow-up insights into electromagnetic machinery, increasing the precision and success rate of mechanical component crafting by +30%. Dowblade assisted with crafting a mechanical tool, gaining experience and growth. New knowledge acquired, manifested mind, a deeper understanding of Psycho Cut techniques. Allows for the formation of a refined psychic weapon. This is the evolved concept behind the Heart Blade of Manifested Thought. Random material lead, fragmented valor armor. Location, Paldea region. Associated craft, psychic forging technique. After completing the magma booster, electric booster, and zoom lens, progress on the EXP share stalled. But increasing base stats, effort values, didn't strictly require it. Hikaru had already crafted a crimson wood sculpture before, which gave all owned Pokémon synchronized EV gains. Knowledge gained, full power with the right booster, fire-type Pokémon can enter a burst state, allowing them to break through their own limits. Knowledge gained, electric overdrive with the right booster, electric-type Pokémon can reach their full potential and surpass themselves. Knowledge gained, focus in battle, critical hit ratio +20%. Outside of battle, observation ability +20%. The boosters were made using mechanical knowledge and the booster crafting technique. And not just for fire or electric types, energy from other types could also be stored to produce corresponding boosters. At the moment, though, the two boosters were empty. Hikaru had no strong fire or electric type Pokémon nearby. For fire type energy, Registeel could use a fire hidden power. For electric type energy, the Hisuian Overquill naturally came to mind. Hikaru planned to hand the boosters to them for charging later. Then, out of mischief, Hikaru used mechanical knowledge and mystic runes to mass-produce various villain team entry cards. Keys that once only elite members could possess were now made like wholesale products. These could be given to champions to help infiltrate enemy teams, or put up for sale online to scare some criminal groups, but that would attract too much attention. Better to save them for future use. Team Galactic's wave technology really is insane. Most of their secret keys work by emitting special signals. Once you master wave tech, you can waltz into any villain HQ. Finally, there was one more mechanical item, the E-Bullet gun. Strictly speaking, it's a mechanical contraption with some mystic elements. This is the gun that Murata used in the special manga, made by the Trap Master of Hone. By loading dirt from different regions into the gun, it can draw patterns on the ground sigils that calm frenzied Pokémon. After days of crafting, Steven was about to return to Hone. Regirock showcased the mining haul he and Steven collected. Hard stones, light clay, float stones, everstones, oval stones, colored shards, gems, and many fossils. Most importantly, multiple heat rocks. These extend sunlight duration, usually found in dry, sunlit areas. Since Johto's terrain is similar to Sinnoh's, heat rocks could also be unearthed in its underground tunnels. With these, Giratina's reverse world can finally light up. Hikaru handed over the crafted items to Stephen with a few words of instruction. If you find the legendary megalith, could you bring it to me for research? This stone was first discovered in a Hone ruin, but given the timeline, it might not appear until the XY era, so maybe not this year. Hikaru only asked casually. Stephen pondered. Part of his reason for returning was indeed related to a megalith. But it wasn't on the ground, it was in the sky. I understand. I'll keep an eye out. Hikaru always seemed to know secrets no one else did. That got Stephen thinking. Could this mysterious craftsman possibly know the truth behind the giant meteorite? It had come out of nowhere. Dr. Sorlius at the Moss Deep Space Center had recently observed a huge meteor hurtling toward their planet. It posed a massive threat, possibly global. You said a giant meteorite? Why would you think I'd know something about it? Hikaru asked. I don't know. It was just a feeling, Stephen chuckled. Something told me you'd say something astonishing. And sure enough, to Stephen's surprise, Hikaru nodded. I actually do know. You asked the right person. Go seek out Rayquaza. And the Draconid people. Oh, and that meteorite, it's actually a Pokémon. Maybe it's just looking for a friend, Hikaru added with a smirk. That's just a wild guess, of course. Chapter 172. The giant meteorite approaching the Hone region was, in truth, a Pokémon known as Deoxys. Every time Deoxys appears, it is accompanied by a meteorite almost without exception. As seen in the movies, they possess a strong sense of camaraderie. When a companion goes missing, the others will go to any length to search for them. Upon entering the Pokémon world in meteorite form, Deoxys faces grave challenges. Small meteorites are often treated as snacks by Rayquaza, who dwells in the ozone layer. But this meteorite was too large for Rayquaza to devour. Thus, Rayquaza was likely now seeking the power of Mega Evolution, and in doing so, might reveal the legendary megalith discovered in Hone, believed to be one of the origins of Mega Evolution. Every encounter between Deoxys and Rayquaza ends in battle. In the special manga, the Deoxys that caused the massive meteorite crisis was an individual subjected to experiments by Giovanni, then abandoned. Seeking revenge, it returned to this planet with a giant meteorite. But in the games, Deoxys's intentions are left vague. If it, too, is searching for a companion, then there's indeed a place in the game linked to it. Located south of the Kanto region near the Caei Islands lies Birth Island. In the special manga, the Deoxys on Birth Island was another individual controlled by Giovanni, sharing a deep connection with the Deoxys carrying the meteorite. Most notably, both individuals wrap themselves in a triangular barrier, a skill unseen in Deoxys appearing in movies and the anime. Moreover, in the games, Birth Island has a curious setting. Although Fired/Leaf Green state that it lies near the Caei Islands, when accessing the map from Birth Island in Emerald, the map still shows the Hone region, though the island itself isn't marked anywhere. At this moment, Hone was stirring. In preparation for the meteorite's impact, the remnants of Team Magma, Team Aqua, Devon Corporation, and the Draconid tribe had all begun moving. Their plans would inevitably clash, but ultimately, the heroes would resolve everything. Haruka and Yuaki would guide Rayquaza into Mega Evolution and launch into space, facing the vengeful Deoxys. Out of curiosity, Hikaru crafted a ticket using his Mystic Credential craft. After purchasing and studying various artworks, his drawing skills had improved somewhat, though they still didn't match a professional print. At a glance, it was clearly a counterfeit. However, thanks to the special crafting technique, when handed to another person, the ticket would exert a mystic influence, making others recognize it as a genuine special item. Crafted item, Aurora ticket. Description: a necessary ticket for traveling to Birth Island. It glows beautifully. Created through Mystic Credential craft, it possesses the same effect as a real ticket, if such a thing truly exists. Effect: a ticket usable at any port. When used, the disembarkation point changes to Birth Island. Those without the ticket cannot reach the destination. After carefully storing the ticket, Hikaru decided to use it after leaving Johto. Then, carrying the heat rocks, various materials, and some important tools, he entered the reverse world. Hey! Upon returning to the abandoned workshop in the reverse world and pushing open the door, he heard the cries of Pokémon. On both sides of the building, new apple trees had appeared. Groups of applin were leisurely swaying among the branches and trunks, using their abilities to handle the apples. When they saw Hikaru, the timid applin widened their big eyes and cried nervously, scrambling up to the tops of the apple trees, clustering together for courage, yet still peeking curiously at Hikaru. Human? Some applin tilted their heads in confusion at the human's appearance. But compared to the terrifying Giratina and the fearsome Caesar that occasionally roamed this world, this human seemed much kinder. Hikaru waved gently toward the applin and looked around. Giratina and Caesar were nowhere to be seen. They must have gone to tend to other floating islands. Perfect timing, since Hikaru had brought statues and materials to further develop this place. Kachiki? Kachiki? Question marks seemed to pop over the applins' heads. After exchanging a few wary glances, sensing no malice from Hikaru, they cautiously bounced down the tree trunks. Apples fell like rain as they gathered around him, their wide eyes full of curiosity. Want something to eat? Hikaru offered poke blocks. For greedy Pokémon, delicious food was the first step toward friendship. Smelling the sweet fragrance of the poke blocks, the applin wagged their tails excitedly, their eyes sparkling as they eagerly pressed themselves against the poke blocks and devoured them. Ka! Ka! One applin leaped with joy, feeling as if it would melt from happiness. Bursting with energy, it was soon joined by the others, tumbling together in a scene that looked like a rolling heap of apples. While the applin feasted, Hikaru placed down a celebi statue he had brought. Full and curious, the applin flocked to the beautiful sculpture. As they stared at the stone figure in awe, it was as if lightning struck their minds in enlightenment. Applin, X10, recalled a move. Which move would you like to have them relearn? Defense curl, rollout, recycle, or astonish? Recycle, Hikaru decided. One of the reasons he had returned to the reverse world was to fulfill his promise to Giratina, to help the applin become competent apple cultivators. Among the 4 available moves, recycle was by far the most useful. Now, even applin with the gluttony ability had become valuable contributors to the reverse world. Kachiki! Kachiki! The applin bounced joyfully. They had fully mastered recycle. Before Hikaru's eyes, the poke blocks they had devoured were reconstituted into apple blocks through their ability. Each Pokémon had a different method of recycling, and for applin, it was a fusion of the remaining apple flesh, poke block residue, and grass and dragon-type energies. Out of curiosity, Hikaru picked a fresh apple and tossed it to one of the applin, a particularly noticeable bright green one. Ingredient: Premium Big Apple. Description: Restores 100 fullness. If eaten at full fullness, increases maximum fullness by 10. Recovers 20 HP. With specific cultivation, different breed variations may appear. A shiny. Hikaru stared at the green applin, who gave him a sly glance and devoured most of the apple like a whirlwind, leaving behind some scraps. Then, seemingly performing for Hikaru, it used recycle. Before his eyes, the remaining scraps merged and regrew into a fully formed apple. Oh! It's almost like regeneration. So that's one of the true meanings behind recycle. Hikaru lifted the green applin, who, instead of fearing him, examined him thoughtfully. Can you show me how your ripen ability works? Hikaru asked. The green applin chirped excitedly, then bounced back onto a tree and latched onto an immature apple. Channeling all its energy, the apple visibly ripened before Hikaru's eyes. Green applin completed a task, gaining experience and growth. Knowledge gained: directed ripening. By combining the ripen ability and recycle, immature fruits can be rapidly grown and mutated. Different cultivation directions can produce unique flavored apples. Using mutation knowledge, even rarer apples can be bred. Kachiki! The green applin gazed curiously at the now oversized apple. Hikaru reached out and activated his knowledge of mutation. In an instant, the rich red apple's color deepened further, turning into shimmering gold. High-grade ingredient: golden apple. Description: a special fruit typically found only in the Mystery Dungeon world. Brimming with rich nutrients and energy, it greatly benefits Pokémon growth. Upon consumption, fully restores fullness and increases maximum fullness by 50. Also raises all base stats. Effect: growth bonus. Cures all status conditions and fully restores HP. Chapter 173. You have finally arrived. Sensing Hikaru's arrival in the reverse world, Giratina immediately flew back from a distant floating island, leaving Caesar behind to continue working tirelessly. But when Giratina returned to the abandoned workshop, it was greeted by an unexpected sight: groups of applin neatly lining up to feast on a type of fruit it had never seen before. What is that? A golden apple. Curiosity gleamed in Giratina's eyes. Hikaru didn't bother with explanations, he simply picked the largest golden apple and handed it to Giratina. Lowering its massive head and carefully opening its armored mask, Giratina accepted the offering. Upon swallowing the golden apple, it immediately sensed the fruit's extraordinary nature. First, the taste was exquisite. Sweetness dominated, but layers of rich flavors accompanied it, stimulating both its nerves and spirit. Then, all its fatigue and power depletion rapidly vanished, as if multiple restorative effects had been applied at once. Strength surged anew and astonishingly, for the first time in ages, Giratina felt full. As a legendary Pokémon, and especially as the guardian of antimatter, Giratina and its two siblings Palkia and Dialga did not require sustenance. They lived by absorbing natural energies, with no real need for food. The original purpose of growing apple trees in the reverse world had simply been environmental restoration, eating apples was a secondary consideration. But now, Giratina hadn't felt this strange and wondrous satisfaction in eons. Moreover, beyond just satiation, there was another sensation, growth, true strengthening. For Giratina, this feeling was deeply unfamiliar. The creation trio were handcrafted by Arceus with immense power. From the moment of their birth, their abilities had steadily grown until reaching a natural limit. They were the pillars of the world, unlike normal Pokémon who could continue training and growing indefinitely. Their power had long since stabilized. Yet now, Giratina was experiencing growth again. A feeling it hadn't felt since it was first created. It was like reliving the days when it grew stronger with every passing moment. This apple is truly incredible, Hikaru said with a wink. In the mystery dungeon world, the golden apple was even rarer than a perfect apple. Just look at the applin, they longed for the golden apples, but production was limited, so they grew desperate. Some even wanted to hoard them and turn them into their new homes, abandoning their original apple bodies without hesitation. Of course, such greedy behavior was fiercely resisted. The applin began squabbling, ramming their apple bodies against each other, while tails and eyes flailed in a chaotic brawl. It was a ridiculous and hilarious sight. Kachaki, Kachaki! Upon Giratina's arrival, the applin briefly glanced its way, but then returned to their feasting without a care. Giratina noticed that after eating apples, they would leave behind scraps and then, through some mysterious power, those scraps regenerated into full apples again. Is this recycle? Yep, Hikaru confirmed, patting the Celebi statue nearby. I fulfilled my promise to you. With this statue, all applin can now relearn recycle. Even those with the gluttony ability won't empty the orchard anymore. Upon hearing this, a few guilty-looking applin slowed their eating noticeably. Kachaki! Meanwhile, the bright green shiny applin hopped onto Hikaru's head. Having bonded with Hikaru after witnessing his earlier power, the little applin decided that perching on his head while munching apples was perfectly acceptable even if it left food crumbs everywhere. Hikaru sighed in exasperation. Have your Pokémon arrived? Giratina asked, tossing a few apples into the air with a casual ominous wind, still focused on the orchard's future. Of course. And I finished the other task too. Look, these are the heat rocks. Dumping a pile of red crystal-studded stones from his bag, Hikaru explained that he had also set up a mirror at Regirock's trading station. From now on, Regirock could send more stones through the mirror for Giratina, though Giratina would need to prepare suitable payments in return. Giratina had already considered this last time. Unfortunately, the reverse world had an abundance of useless debris and very few valuable resources. What about offering the stones from the return cave? Giratina mused. The stones there, interwoven with brilliant life energy and death energy, were believed by ancient people and Pokémon alike to be gateways to the spirit world. They were certainly valuable enough for barter. Let's run a trial on this island, Hikaru suggested. Crafting a mount for one of the heat rocks so it wouldn't drift away, Hikaru installed it into a ventilated box and gave another piece directly to Giratina. Giratina then used Sunny Day. The heat rocks resonated, amplifying the sunlight until the entire floating island bathed in a bright, clear day. Gone was the usual gloomy overcast. The world now shone with warm sunlight and a pleasant breeze. The applin, heads tilted back, basked in the sunshine, hopping around joyfully. Ah, sunlight! Praise the sun! There was an old saying in Hisui, where bright light shines, shadows are born. It originally described Arceus and Giratina's relationship. But now, Giratina itself was the one bringing dazzling light. And the shadow seemed to have vanished. Letting out an excited draconic roar, Giratina reveled in its accomplishment. It could now truly sow sunlight in the reverse world. And with the arrival of more weather-related rocks in the future, even more climates could be simulated. Unfortunately, Giratina only knew Sunny Day learned from Lilligant and Rain Dance. To create sandstorms or snow, they'd need weather Pokémon specialized in those elements. Come on out, Grotle. Hikaru summoned his Grotle, its crimson shrubbery striking to the eye. The Applin, sensing its grass-type affinity, instinctively clustered around it. Use Seed Bomb. The abandoned workshop's soil had already been prepared fertile and ready for planting. Grotle scattered seeds across the earth. Under the bright sun and careful nurturing, the seeds sprouted rapidly. As a reward, Hikaru fed Grotle a golden apple, then explained to Giratina the purpose of these seeds. They were a mix of multiple crops, designed to rapidly grow in suitable environments, diversifying the island's flora and helping the ecosystem thrive. Plants born here will adapt uniquely to the reverse world, Hikaru said, touching one of the seedlings. Plant, sunflower, unripe. Description: a beautiful plant resembling a miniature sun. Exhibits heliotropism. Due to the reverse world's influence, once matured, it will permanently maintain its blooming state without withering. The accumulated energy is immense. Looks like we're opening a botanical island, Hikaru chuckled under his breath. Although sunflowers appearing among the mixed seeds? Maybe the seed blend had been a bit too generous. Crack. A strange cracking sound came from his backpack. Something inside began to glow. Suspicious, Hikaru opened it and watched as several fossils wriggled their way to the top. I sense faint life energy. Giratina leaned closer, eyes gleaming with curiosity. It suggested an idea. In the anime, there was a bizarre episode where fossilized Kabuto revived under strange moonlight, no restoration machine required. Clearly, some fossils retained faint seeds of life. Frankly, Pokémon World tech was weird. They could revive incomplete fossils into living Pokémon, yet still struggled to clone Pokémon or humans properly. Is the reverse world really capable of fossil revival? Hikaru mused. Then again, considering Giratina caused the spatial distortions of the Hisui era, it made sense the reverse world held the power to rewind and alter existence. Maybe dunk the fossils in water, add a lightning bolt from Giratina, and voila! Examining the fossils in his hand. Ancient item, Helix fossil. Description: the fully petrified body of an omenit. Once dormant, but with the calming of chaotic energies in parts of the reverse world, a new energy flow has emerged. The life seed within the fossil has been activated. Restoration might be possible. Item event: with fossil restoration and cultivation techniques, in combination with Giratina's power, rebirth may be achievable. There were also a claw fossil, root fossil, and armor fossil. Giratina seemed just as eager. Dragging Hikaru to a familiar giant reversed waterfall, Giratina prepared for the next step. Hikaru remembered this place. It was the very waterfall players had to traverse when reaching Giratina in the games. Unlike normal waterfalls, this one flowed upward. I shall summon my furious lightning here. Chapter 174. Having chosen the site for revival, Giratina hoped to bring more native life forms into the reverse world and enrich its ecosystem. Meanwhile, Hikaru was still contemplating the cultivation craft mentioned in the data. He indeed had knowledge of various cultivation methods for grass types, dragons, ghosts, fire, electric types, and even rock and steel types. However, some were indirect and required tools. They weren't always abilities he could use outright. To truly master such advanced, monotyped cultivation skills, one likely needed items like natural crystals or elemental plates. Since fossil Pokémon usually have the rock type, then, the cultivation craft needed must be the essence of rock, right? Originally, this knowledge was intended to create an artificial mine near the rock mountain ruins. Hikaru hadn't expected it would be used here first. Feeling the power of stone, he focused on enhancing all abilities related to the rock type. Rock energy isn't static, it's a slowly flowing stream of time. Using spiritual energy as a medium, Hikaru poured this rock essence into the fossils in his hands. He began to sense the rhythm of life. The stones felt alive. The dust covering them the time that had passed seemed to rewind. Perhaps it was just an illusion, or perhaps the true power of rock had been awakened. With that, Hikaru tossed the cultivated fossils into the reverse waterfall. Giratina, in its raging form, called down Fury Thunder, a bolt of thunder imbued with divine energy strong enough to crown Pokémon as kings. Surging power flooded the waterfall, and the water of the reverse world was charged with electric might. The fossils, now saturated and floating upward, were being baptized in thunder. This scene reminded Hikaru of an episode from the anime of the three legendary birds in the Orange Islands. Articuno froze the sea, Moltres melted it with fire, and Zapdos infused it with lightning, thus giving birth to the elements of life in a violent form of creation. Then, Hikaru, riding atop Giratina, took out the symbolic plates from his backpack. Why not simulate it here? Extracting DNA from the fossils and reassembling it, wasn't that just activating the genetic code? Ice Articuno. Fire Moltres. Thunder Zapdos. As Hikaru assembled the bird names using the symbolic plates, 3 unique energies stirred. Lightning from Giratina's fury thunder surged into the waterfall. Suddenly, the waters froze, then boiled, and finally sparked with electrical brilliance. The vast energy of the reverse world converged, drawn into the fossils by the storming, life-giving lightning. Then, something incredible happened. Just like in that anime episode where Kabuto were revived under mysterious moonlight, the fully fossilized bodies began to glow, their forms enveloped in the white light of rebirth just like evolution. Hutush! Ancient Pokémon stretched their limbs as their bodies returned to life. Most fossil Pokémon revived this way would have no memory of their past, though there were rare exceptions, like the Torterra in the manga that retained its identity. Under the watchful eyes of Giratina and Hikaru, the first fossil Pokémon was reborn. Amu. A soft-bodied, blue creature with a round, spiral shell on its back blinked its big, black and white eyes. Its tentacles wiggled gently, producing a squishy, sticky sound. It was the sound of life's first awakening. Omenit. The Helix fossil had revived into Omenit. These Pokémon were regular guests at fossil research labs. Some even never went extinct, lurking deep in the oceans or hidden in secluded ecosystems like the Tree of Beginning. Its natural predator was Archeops, another fossil Pokémon. Thankfully, no Archeops existed in this region. As the first Omenit emerged, a second one followed. Swept by the waterfall's current, the pair drifted onto a floating island. Terrified in their new surroundings and especially by the massive, ominous dragon watching them, they panicked. Amu. In a reflexive defense, they both unleashed water gun. Splash! Water splashed onto Giratina's faceplate. It shook its head slowly. The two Omenit immediately panicked, withdrew into their shells, and went still, playing dead in hopes their fragile shells would offer some comfort. Omenit are naturally timid, Hikaru explained. This trait was repeatedly shown in the anime. When they encounter strangers outside their understanding, they flee or hide. The boldest Omenit was probably Yellows in the manga, who at first refused to obey and ran wild. In the glowing light, more ancient Pokémon followed. The second wave was Kabuto, revived from the dome fossil. They had round brown shells, with 2 black dots on top and red dots underneath. Both sets were eyes, creating a surreal and silly appearance. Kabuto shed their shells every 3 days, gradually hardening them. Once evolved, they became apex predators of ancient seas. Compared to Omenit, Kabuto were bolder. Seeing Giratina and Hikaru floating upside down, the freshly reborn Pokémon started murmuring among themselves. Friend, foe, or food. To ancient Pokémon, those were the only 3 categories, and sometimes, those categories could blend. But Giratina's majestic form was too overwhelming. Soon, they concluded. If someone's food here, it's probably us. Following Kabuto were Liliup, revived from root fossils. They wobbled slowly, using powerful suction cups to cling to rocks, impervious to ocean currents. However, this upside-down waterfall clearly wasn't a suitable home. Lastly came the Shieldon, revived from the armor fossil. With a small yellow-brown body and a large shield-like head, it resembled it was wearing steel, though it was actually just hardened skin. Unlike the others, only one Shieldon emerged. Surrounded by all the unfamiliar ancient Pokémon, it glanced around nervously while the others examined it, like deciding whether it was edible. Watching the rising tension, Hikaru smiled at Giratina. Pokémon ecosystems are complex. Not all species will get along. As the master of the reverse world, it'll be up to you to keep the balance. Giratina was contemplative. Though it had long observed the real world through mirrors, it had rarely experienced the savage dynamics of true ecosystems. Especially in ancient times, when Giratina had no access to the physical world and was sealed within the reverse world. Then, we'll assign them each a habitat, Giratina declared. We can welcome even more fossil Pokémon in the future. No matter their hunting habits, they'll always eat berries. I'll reshape some floating islands near the waterfall into temporary homes for them. First, let us give rain to those who love water and sunlight to those who cherish the sun. Giratina raised its head. A brilliant light pierced the dim reverse world, bringing the first ray of a new era to these ancient Pokémon. Chapter 175. Item Event Resolution. You made contact with ancient fossils and, through a combination of specific cultivation abilities and Giratina's power, revived them. These ancient Pokémon will now begin a new life in the reverse world. You've gained insight into the nature of ancient Pokémon, their habits, and the process of life creation. Knowledge acquired. New Genesis activate the genetic code of life and reawaken its vitality, allowing for further growth. Some Pokémon may undergo mysterious changes as a result. Knowledge acquired. Passage of time. Apply the flow of time to certain items to rapidly age or weather them. This greatly shortens production time for items that require long maturation like winemaking. Craft acquired. Fossil restoration craft, B rank. You now know how to restore fossils. Combined with certain mechanical knowledge, you can even build a fossil restoration machine. Craft acquired. Primal craft, A rank. You can now cultivate plants and berries that ancient Pokémon enjoy. Requires mutation knowledge. Construct ancient buildings to soothe the hearts of ancient Pokémon, requires 3 types of architectural knowledge, and combine with destruction craft to design primal mazes that support ancient Pokémon development. Special constructible buildings, Primal Altar, Celebi Shrine, Phantom Tower. Damn! I can actually build those unique structures from the original games now. But that new Genesis knowledge felt a little suspicious. Activating a Pokémon's genes to restore vitality? Could this let you touch a Pokémon and trigger Mega Evolution, or even create paradox forms? Well, that wasn't mentioned explicitly. But there was another intriguing detail. By activating a Pokémon's genetic code, it may evolve or grow in unique directions. These are called mysterious transformations. Hikaru blinked. Hold on a minute. Was this saying that regular Pokémon could be altered into regional forms? That they might evolve differently, or even revert to their ancient forms through rapid evolutionary leaps. For instance, a regular fire-type Vulpix that couldn't evolve into Alolan Ninetales in Alola might be able to if its genes were activated. If James has the foot of evolution. I've just gotten the hand of evolution. Kachaki, Kachaki. The green applin resting on Hikaru's head had witnessed the entire scene of Giratina creating Pokémon. It was shocked, excited, and clearly impressed, showering Giratina with admiration. Giratina, who was very pleased, thought, so this is what Arceus felt when praised? I am the master of the distorted world, sovereign of reversal. I have awakened you from your ancient slumber. From this moment forward, this world shall be your new home. With that declaration, Giratina summoned a strange wind that gently lifted the ancient Pokémon and sent them to different floating islands, preventing any bloody chaos. Omenet were no issue, they were naturally docile, unless they evolved. But the others, especially Kabuto and Lillipup, were hunters even in their unevolved states. When separated and unable to spot prey, they growled unhappily. Giratina groaned inwardly. These creatures had the mindset of toddlers, ravenous toddlers. And now it had become their babysitter. With a sweep of its tail, Giratina dragged up a net of fish and shrimp from a real-world lake and dumped them onto a lake-themed floating island. Then it used Rain Dance. Rain fell across the island, relaxing the Lillipup. Giratina repeated the process for the Kabuto's island as well. The ancient beasts howled joyfully, and their calls now held a faint note of affection toward Giratina. Getting an ecosystem running is no small feat. You're going to be busy, Hikaru remarked. While many claim there are no creatures other than Pokémon in the Pokémon world, Hikaru had observed otherwise. Normal fish, shrimp, and even animals clearly still existed. In the early days, Professor Oak's major contribution was distinguishing Pokémon from ordinary animals. After all, even with over 1,000 Pokémon species, that wasn't enough to sustain an entire global ecosystem alone. Meanwhile, the gentle Shieldon had been removed from the savage prehistoric zoo and relocated to the apple-themed floating islands inhabited by Applin. Kachiki. The curious Applin swarmed the newcomer. Shieldon, newly reborn, was startled but quickly relaxed. Unlike its fierce prehistoric peers, these Pokémon were harmless and only cared about apples. Shieldon uses its tough facial skin to dig in the dirt. It doesn't know plow field, but its movements can loosen soil, Hikaru explained. However, if it doesn't get enough berries, it might nibble on tree roots. Hikaru patted the shieldin. The essence of rock made it feel close to him. The fear in its eyes faded, replaced by curiosity toward this strange new world. Soon it was playing with the applin until it got a bit too curious and bit one. Instantly, the applin scattered in panic. Shieldin blinked, confused. The applin perched high in the trees or huddled far away, chirping angrily. Pokémon must respect each other's ways of life, Hikaru said, beginning preschool education mode. Thanks to the Crystal Heart, he could communicate with ancient Pokémon. Shieldin didn't fully understand, but it got the main idea. Don't eat the applin. Okay, it would try really hard not to. Some ancient Pokémon liked eating special prehistoric berries. Hikaru recalled how Archeops had once shown a preference for them in the anime. But growing such berries required ancient seeds. Taking out a pouch of mixed seeds that Grotle had scattered, Hikaru asked Giratina to spread them across the ancient Pokémon's islands and begin the catalysis. Power surged. The seeds rooted and grew rapidly. Under the reverse world's conditions, they began to mutate. Soon, the ancient Pokémon gathered around, drawn to the scent and aura of something familiar. One tree stood out in particular. Hikaru approached it. Ingredient: ancient star peach tree, unripe. Description: a legendary berry. Said to contain primordial power. Its flavor is indescribable. Once cast into the ends of the world, this mythical berry is rich in nutrients and beloved by ancient Pokémon. In food, it is a miraculous, mystical ingredient. Only cultivable in select locations. Known site: distorted world, reverse world. This place being the world's edge is saturated with violent energy ideal for the star peach's growth. Effect: when held by a Pokémon, it greatly boosts a random stat in times of crisis. Continued cultivation may cause mutation, resulting in a special mythical berry capable of curing all poisons. It is considered a sacred offering by the island guardians of Alola. Star peach berry. Star fruit.
Additionally, if you would like to request novels and access my Google Drive where I have 200+ audiobooks, then you can join my Patreon. Link is also provided in the description.